A man has been arrested in the UnitedHealth CEO assassination. The guy was apparently found with a weapon, a manifesto, and he was ID'd by people at McDonald's, apparently. And now this individual is named as a person of interest. Some are reporting that he is the suspect in question, but an arrest has been made. Now, this individual that's been arrested, we don't know for sure if he's the guy or what the deal is. Everybody's rushing to jump to conclusions. I warn you, be careful. Though, according to the reporting, it does seem like this may be the guy. Some of it doesn't really make sense. I mean, this person showed up, assassinated the CEO, escaped, had a plan, but then kept all of the evidence on his person and dressed like the assassin and went to eat at McDonald's. I don't know. So that's why I'm saying be careful, because this might not be the person. They're saying it's someone connected to or a person of interest, although the individual is being arraigned in PA for having fake IDs and having these weapons or this weapon. So we will talk about that. But at the same time today, Daniel Penny was acquitted. That's it. He's out celebrating in New York. Congratulations, Mr. Penny, on your freedom. And we're gonna go through all of that. The left is vowing to riot. So I don't know if we will see some riots today, maybe over the weekend. Hard to know for sure. But we're going to go over a lot of the details in the UnitedHealthcare CEO story and the assassination, how the left is responding. They're claiming the guy arrested is a right-winger, but they're celebrating it. Yeah, the dude's writings, if this is the assassin, is certainly no right-winger. He's an anti-capitalist, a climate change activist, writing about how he believes in violence and all of these things, very much aligning with the left. But again, we got to be careful on this one. We also have a very funny update here on Taylor Lorenz, who has lost her I don't know if you'd call it a job, but Vox is letting her go. They're not going to carry her podcast anymore, claiming it's unrelated to her comments about how she finds joy in the assassination. She appeared on Piers Morgan's, where she said that she is joyful along with millions of others over what happened. And she's insane, and these people are nuts, but we'll go over this. And then, of course, I mean, so over the weekend, World War III, I guess. Syria, their government has collapsed. The Assad family has fled to Moscow. They are being granted asylum. The Israel, U.S., and Turkey are now bombing or launching incursions into Syria. Russia has evacuated the naval base in Tartus, a massive development, which may signal either that Russia is routed and they are diminishing, or potentially in the same regard, they're becoming desperate and this could escalate. So we will see. Before we get started with all that, my friends, head over to shop.boonieshq.com and pick up Johnny Haynes Pro Model Gay Frogs. For those that haven't seen this board, it's a beautiful celebration of frogs and their choice of love. These two frogs are holding hands, drinking what appears to be some type of green chemical liquid with a rainbow above them. They are happy. And this is a prideful art that celebrates their love. So you can check that out at boonieshq.com. And of course, this is one of our more, we just launched the Right to Arm Bears. And it looks like some kind of, I don't know, mountain-dwelling, flannel-wearing bear with a shotgun. And I only shouted this at one time, but apparently people are buying this one quite a bit because they love the Right to Arm Bears. And you can always check out boonieshq.com. We got a bunch of boards, of course. The most popular is Step on Sneck and Find Out. Those things sell out every 10 seconds. We do have about 30 of them currently in stock if you wanted to get one. But we also do have stickers and the boobies. Everybody loves the booby birds. These are blue-footed boobies. Don't forget to go to castbrew.com and pick up your coffee and become a member at timcast.com to support our work directly. As a member, you get access to our Discord server, which is great. They're playing video games in there. They got pre-shows, after shows. Everybody is friends. And there's tens of thousands of people who are in that Discord server. It's basically a chat room, and you can hang out with like-minded individuals. So I recommend you sign up. And there's going to be a members-only uncensored show tonight at 10 p.m. You don't want to miss it. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Vince Dow.
Hey guys, I'm Vince Dow. I'm a Gen Z conservative commentator, and yeah, we got a lot to talk about tonight. A very loaded show for sure. So
yeah, I don't want to take too much time of the intro. Ian Crossland, what's up, everybody? Just a special shout out to Scott Horton. He's got a new book out called Provoked. If you haven't heard of that or checked that one out, check it out. Scott Horton's a vault of knowledge about Middle East conflicts. It's a lot about how the U.S. has started a new Cold War with Russia. Fascinating read. I have a copy myself. Phil.
Hello, everybody. My name is Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and a counter-revolutionary. Let's go.
Before we get into any news, I want to cite this headline from the Daily Wire that says, Kamala campaign account deletes post that led to Tim Pool defamation suit. I had posted, the lawsuit between Tim Pool, and the Kamala Harris campaign has been resolved to my dissatisfaction. I will then read just one line. Asked for further details about the legal settlement, Pool said in a statement, ha, 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 ha. And that's all I have to say on the matter.
Epic.
Let's jump to the story from the New York Post. Suspect in fatal shooting of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson ID'd as Luigi Mangione, an ex-Ivy League student. Now, this story is crazy, and I want to stress, while this person has been arrested, and I believe we have images of him being brought in to court. Again, we don't know exactly if this is the guy. Even if they charged him, he's innocent until proven guilty. They say he reportedly had a 3D printed ghost gun, similar to the one used in the Wednesday morning murder, along with a silencer, a manifesto, 4 fake IDs, when he was arrested by cops. He's 26 and an anti-capitalist Ivy League graduate. Now, I will stress, Nick Sorter, tweeting, far left is identified as the suspect in the assassination of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Is anyone surprised? He's an anti-capitalist climate change activist, former Ivy League student who idolized Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, per the New York Post. Crystal Ball then says, plot twist, the UnitedHealthcare CEO killer was apparently a right-wing fan of Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson, Teal, Huberman, and other right-wing, right-adjacent personalities. Silly. He also followed Ezra Klein and AOC. I'm going to say this. Right off the bat, again, stressing this is very important, okay? This person's not been charged in the assassination. I think they're being charged with having the silencer, the gun, and the fake IDs. This, for all we know, although this profile does fit the face that they revealed, it seems to be the person they were looking for at the hostel. Maybe it's someone who was given the stuff. No idea. Until it's proven, I'm going to be careful on this one. That being said, this dude's a far leftist. No question.
Clearly.
I want to stress, just because he has some writings, which we'll go over in just a second, about the Unabomber. In it, he clearly makes left-wing ideological positions, calling for violence. This is a leftist. And we can break that down, but I'll throw it to you guys so I'm not just ranting on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is probably not, the reason this probably confuses people is he's not the standard, liberal resist lib type of leftist. I mean, you could say he has some views that are third positionist or all over the political spectrum, but to label this guy some type of generic conservative right-wing guy because he, I guess, retweeted Tucker Carlson before is just ridiculous. If anything, you could say he's sort of outside the normal political spectrum, and that would be fair, but to say conservative generically, no, absolutely not. Just like how Thomas Crooks was a Trump supporter.
Exactly.
Right?
I was just going to say that. The left likes to do everything they can to distance themselves from any actual political violence.
Right.
Just like they were saying, Thomas Crooks who's the guy that was shooting at Trump. He's a Trump supporter. So they're making completely ridiculous arguments.
But they're celebrating it.
Yeah.
Taylor Lorenz.
Yeah.
Okay?
On one hand, he's a right winger, and then the other hand, they're celebrating it. Yeah.
Right. This is clearly so. I mean, breaking down what left and right means is okay. Fine, it's loaded or whatever. But when we say left and right in a common colloquial sense, we are referring to political tribes and little else, and the manifestos of those tribes. So the right typically refers to a cohort of post-liberals, disaffected liberals, conservatives, libertarians, and anarcho-capitalist libertarian types. Just falls under libertarian. The left typically refers to anti-capitalist, environmentalists, woke, pro-trans. So if you want to make this argument of right means free market and left means centralized economy, then left and right makes no sense in any context in American political commentary. If you want to make the argument that it's fascist and communist, you're basically just saying authoritarian, and the difference being traditional worldview versus progressive worldview. In the American sense of left and right, this guy is left-wing.
Yeah, I think that for as much as in my opinion, I guess, I think that if you are an anti-capitalist or if you are against private property, those are clearly left positions. There's not a whole lot of debate about it. The idea of ending private property was one of Marx's tenets of communism. He said that you could boil his philosophy down into one sentence, which is the abolition of private property.
Take a look at this. It says, the suspect nabbed in the killing is an anti-capitalist Ivy League grad who liked online quotes from Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and see that in a manifesto, these parasites had it coming. Tech whiz Luigi Mangione, 26, originally from Towson, MD. Wow, that's crazy. That's not that far from here. Apparently hated the medical community because of how it treated his sick relative, sources say. Now, the crazy thing is, we've also seen rumors that he suffered an injury either surfing or hiking. And some people are posting that he had a back injury a few months ago and then fell off and no one heard from him until he appeared now. No idea.
I also think like I don't understand the obsession really to make this so political to begin with, because I don't know if that was the initial accusation of conservatives that like, oh, this guy's a leftist. I think it's generally understood this is probably someone who is scorned over the healthcare system for a specific reason, and even like I think the need to even politicize it is kind of ridiculous. I mean, obviously people are going to be interested in what he said or whatever, but I don't even see the relevance, honestly, to some degree.
I mean, I slightly disagree. The question was it politically or ideologically motivated? Mm-hmm. And it is not so like I was saying, like if we want to be honest, the first thing we have to do is define left and right, because people use them to mean different things. It typically refers to the tribes in American in the political sphere. So often it does refer to a largely traditional versus a largely progressive worldview. It does in somewhat overlap with smaller government, less regulation, and larger government, more regulation, but it's not absolute. So it's generally this amorphous structure. The reason why I think it's important to draw the distinction here is that the quote unquote right, as we see it today, seeks to bring about change through voting. Only January 6th did we see a massive riot. Then you've got what was that other riot in the 2000s? What was it called? Let me look it up. And I don't even know if it's right wing.
I don't know of any riots.
This was the Brooks Brothers riot, a demonstration led by Republican staffers at a meeting in Miami-Dade, and they called it the Brooks Brothers riot. And I don't even know if it actually counts as a riot, to be completely honest. It's like close as you're going to get. So the right in this country tends to be families, suit-wearing individuals. They don't have time to go do these things. They tend to have kids, not always. They're going to show up to community meetings, banging on their fist on a podium or a lectern, being like, "We demand change." And the right manifesting power is best exemplified by Donald Trump and the Republicans sweeping, as we just saw. That is, all of these people being like, "This country is going to end unless we do something." What can we do? What did they do? Scott Pressler registered voters, cleaned up streets. People went around and knocked on doors. People went online and complained. The left kills people, burns things down, firebombs things, gives out Molotovs, advocates for revolution and destruction. That's what this guy was doing. He has a post where he was commenting on Goodreads Ted Kaczynski's manifesto, where he literally says, and I'm not going to quote the whole thing because I don't think it should be repeated, but he basically says that peaceful protest does not work. Ted Kaczynski, it's fascinating how he insults Kaczynski for killing innocent people, but then goes on to say he praises violence and the use of violence. And now they're saying they found a manifesto. It is not of the political right in this country to violate the norms, the rules, the regulations to a great degree, and to advocate for violence. The right in this country is actually rather, the joke we make about the Republican Party is slow down there, Democrats. They don't want to step out of line. They don't want to overly wield power. Even Donald Trump in his first term did not go after Hillary Clinton or any of these people. He thought he could play ball. The people on the right genuinely believe as long as we can control the power structures, we'll be okay. While the left shot a guy, BLM riots, go out in the street. They burn things down. They attack people. 30 plus deaths in the BLM riots in 2020. This is their MO. So this guy, anti-capitalist, climate change activist, complaining about the healthcare industry and CEOs, while leftists online are cheering for him, I think it's important to draw the distinction of if we as a culture allow that to persist unchecked, these are the things you get. And the right, as we see today, which includes a lot of former liberals like myself, are saying, we don't want violence. We don't want death. We want to come together, elect a Donald Trump and populist, conservative Republican types. Look, we're big fans of Thomas Massey because we're more libertarian and liberty-minded than anything else. But the right in this country is screaming and rattling and banging on the table for political structural change, not through violence.
At the moment, I think it's because the right, as we know it in the United States, has adopted a moderate stance over the last 4 years.
That's because, as I described already, the left and the right, as we describe it, are terms to describe the American political climate. So when we say right, we are referring to post-liberals, disaffected liberals, libertarians, and conservatives.
In the United States? You mean?
In the United States.
Because like the Nazis we were talking about before the show would have been considered right. The fascists, Mussolini's fascists would have been considered right. And they were very evil.
Now, what does right mean in your context? It's not the same thing as what I'm saying.
It's more of an economic thing. I think of it in terms of like fiscal economic, like economic conservatism.
The Nazis had a command economy.
That is true.
The Nazis didn't have the same kind of centralized economy as the communists, but they used social order and pressure to maintain the economy that they wanted.
Yeah, man, the terms left and right are too diachromatic to...
That's why I said in the United States, left and right is a reference to these two political camps. So the Nazis maintained control of the economy through the fear of what the Nazis would do to you if you weren't just a part of the crowd.
And through lying. They told everyone they were building highways and cars and they were spending it on tanks.
The famous line was they would go to a steel factory and say, "Why aren't you producing steel for the movement?" And then people would immediately be like, I get the idea. So it wasn't that there was an on the books penalty for not producing steel. It was this is the way, you better do it. Or that's very much what the woke do. Whereas the communists were like, write down in the book what you're doing or we'll send you to the gulag. So there's still command centralized economies. But anyway, I digress. Yeah. That's why I'm like, when Crystal Ball says he was right wing or right adjacent, I'm like, listening to Jonathan Haidt's research on thought processes and structures is not right wing.
Yeah, I think calling it left or right is a little bit presumptuous. Really, I mean, the guy seemed all over that, but he seems down. If you're looking at that 4-quadrant situation, he looks like anarchistic, like he was anti-establishment.
Yeah. And that's sort of my point with this is not that there's not a political undertone to what happened. Let me, I guess, clarify what I was saying earlier. It's more so that, like, I think it's wild how you have, like, a generic woke Democrat trying to point at generic MAGA supporter and say, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. When in reality, you look at this guy's political views, I think I agree with you, Tim, that they are left-wing coded, but it's a lot more complicated and I guess philosophical what he believed than the average just like Democrat on Facebook.
For sure.
That's not who really did this attack.
Yeah.
Either, you know?
His motivations, like, he takes climate change very seriously. Mm-hmm. He takes the healthcare industry very seriously, much more than I know. People just generally don't like the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
But again, I stress, the right is basically like, oh, if we keep voting, we'll make a difference. Hey, this time it did.
Yeah, it does.
And that's the point. The left are the ones. This guy literally wrote in his manifesto, which I'm like, not manifesto, but in his review of the Unabomber, he says that we're animals and any animal on the planet would fight to the death seeing what was going on, but we're cowards or blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. That is not a right-wing position.
Sounds like it's out of a manifesto.
Right?
Like,
when the left says the right are fascists because they follow Donald Trump, the leader, that's a really good example. Believe that, fine. What you're basically saying is that the average person looks to the leader of their tribe. The far right is Trump's in charge, we'll do what he says. It's like, okay, these are not the kind of people who are going to try and overthrow the government.
And also, far anything, like people that are obsessed sycophants could be considered extremist right, extremist left. The people that voted for whoever the Democratic Party fed them were extremists in that direction. The people that will say yes to anything Donald Trump proposes, even if it's throwing people in prison for burning the American flag, far right, that's an extremist in that direction. So you got to be critical of your leaders to not become an extremist. So I think this guy would be considered an extremist, and I call him left or right. I'm just surprised Sorter did that. Nick, as far as I know, is usually pretty, I mean, maybe he's got a point. But Crystal Ball seemed totally off base calling that anyway. Well,
if you look at his Twitter account, you can see that he's like commenting on Tucker Carlson and Jonathan Haidt. He makes a comment about Tucker Carlson. He says that brutalist architecture is demoralizing to people or something to that effect. And he says Tucker Carlson is right. And I'm like, having the capacity to agree with a correct point doesn't make you necessarily left or right wing.
Right.
You can be a far leftist. Ben Shapiro can sit here and talk about how we shouldn't overtax corporations and overregulation is bad for business or whatever. I don't know what his position is exactly. And then if a leftist said something like, we need to find a solution to the fact that children die of the flu and people are dying on the street, Ben's going to say, I agree. That doesn't make him a leftist, right? So this guy saying Tucker has a point that brutalist architecture is demoralizing. It's this blank slab. It's not good. Doesn't mean right wing anything. You're insane if you don't agree with the good points someone makes, if they're good points, just because you're like they're a leftist or a right winger.
Well, I mean, look, I don't think that the architecture preferences by people are a good barometer as to right or left.
But that's what they're saying.
I know they're ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
because if you take your average like liberal to Barcelona or some city with very old architecture, they're gonna like it. Does that mean they're right wing? You know, it's a ridiculous argument.
I was getting a handful of people that were commenting that swore up and down that they were not of the left, but they were still saying that they thought what happened was a good thing, that it was time to put these CEOs on notice and et cetera and stuff like that.
Insane.
It's clearly insane. And I think that if you take that position, then you're not just I do think that it is fair to say you're not just right or left, you're anti-society, right? Because if you live in a society where you have vigilantes going out and doing this kind of stuff, you end up with just more police, you end up with more government influence, you end up with less freedom. And I don't see how anyone could actually want that result when they're saying, look, these CEOs are a bad thing and they're not taking care of people the way they need to. And the solution, it will end up being, just more policing, more government, more authoritarianism. It just doesn't make any sense.
It gives the elites an excuse to consolidate even more power.
It's an example of anarchy when it's chaotic and evil. Like, anarchy is not always bad. Sometimes you want no rules in the system so that the system can flourish. Like with farming, you don't necessarily want, you need to be loose in some systems. But this is an example of when anarchism is bad, and it can make authoritarianism go haywire if it's not kept in check.
And look, I totally understand.
This is not anarchy, though.
He just totally threw the rules out the window and was like, we must take it into our vigilantism as anarchy.
Anarchy, if you go to ask Michael Malice about this, he's going to tell you you're wrong.
Ooh, I'd love to have Michael Malice on again.
Anybody who truly understands what anarchy means, it does not mean using violence. Violence is the antithesis of anarchy. Anarchy means without authority. To walk up to a man with a weapon and end his life is the exertion of ultimate authority over someone else because your ideas are better. That is the antithesis of what anarchy is. So true anarchists, not these far-left whack jobs who call themselves anarchists because they're not, they're tankies, they're communists. Real anarchy is people discussing with each other and making agreements, sometimes begrudgingly and sometimes happily.
Well, this guy quoting the laws of the jungle and things like that is anarchy. Like, animal is strong, animal eat, animal destroy. That's anarchy.
That's not anarchy.
That's like total no law, no rule, no authority, the strongest take. Like, that's anarchy.
All right, let's define authority.
The authorship of power within a system.
So what say you, Phil?
I assume authority would be the rightful or correct distribution of power.
And what do you think?
Authority? Probably the ability to command your will on someone under the threat of violence.
You have the closest to the dictionary definition.
Yeah.
It is the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. A man walking up to another man and putting bolts in his back is the ultimate exercise of authority. It is not anarchy. Anarchy would be a conversation where neither asserts authority over each other, neither exerts power over each other, and they have a discussion and then come to terms. So these far leftists have taken the term anarchy, and this is offensive to me, and I'm not an anarchist. But if you actually talk to real anarchists, they'll tell you every political ideology has the means for violence to come about what they want, but it is antithetical to the idea of an anarchist society that is trying to have a discussion to arbitrarily decide to exert the ultimate authority, which is to take someone's life by force unilaterally.
But the thing about having a discussion until you find terms is sometimes you don't find terms.
That's right. Anarchy is impossible. That's why I'm not an anarchist. And there's a lot of anarchists who would argue why I'm wrong, but I think they're wrong.
But to say anarchy is impossible kind of violates the definition, because you have to create a possible situation in order to define it.
Anarchy is impossible. The reason why is in history there have been a few short-lived anarchist societies. Most notably is the Catalonia anarchist commune, or whatever they call it. And the problem is when no one has the authority to exert any power or direct obedience, those that do crush them instantly.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, that's what always will happen is somebody will take authority. So in some systems that you want to refer to as anarchist, maybe just bringing that word up is a mistake. Maybe it's totally impossible to say the anti-authority is non-existent. There will always be some authority.
Right.
I mean, you look at the Chaz and the Chop; those are supposed to be, the autonomous zone and stuff like that. As soon as the police were who were ostensibly the authority before the establishment of the Chaz or whatever, as soon as they said they weren't going to go in, gangs became the authority. I think there were people walking around with guns and stuff.
I think the distinction is important because far leftists, if you go to the subreddit like r/anarchism, it is not anarchists. They know very little. They've perverted the writers and philosophies of anarchy, and they advocate for centralized authoritarian power to subject people to their will. They hold fringe cultural leftist views. They are tankies. They claim they're not, and they claim they hate tankies.
Tanky? That's a Soviet?
Far left communist authoritarian.
What does that come from? This is a little bit of a side.
Stalin, right?
Tanky, the term
Tanky is
tanky.
from, when the communists rolled tanks into Hungary to put down the uprising or whatever.
And people cheered it on, and they were considered tankies. Like,
well, if you were a person that says yes, the communists were right to put that down and roll the tanks in, and they were like, okay, well, those
like violent communists or tankies.
Yeah, they're authoritarian communists.
Go to r/anarchism on Reddit, and they're celebrating this. And then the actual people I know who are like anarchist scholars, and I'd be curious to talk to Michael Malice about it because he certainly knows way more about anarchist philosophy than I do. All the people I've known going back 15 years or so who have been to these protests are like, so for example, during the wave of protests of the 2010s, I was friends with a handful of anarchists who are just like, we utterly despise the far left. We despise the black bloc protesters. We despise Antifa, because they're the ones who make it impossible for anarchist organizing, because the media uses that as a symbol of anarchy and then tells everybody anarchy means this. And it's like going around and setting fire. Like if a group of people goes to your house and threatens to burn your house unless you do what they say, that's called fascistic, or it's called authoritarian, or it's called communist. It's not anarchy. They're asserting power of force over you to harm you. That's what totalitarians do.
But I guess the argument is under anarchy, eventually those are the things that happen, right? So maybe that's why they're associated with anarchy, is because eventually, there's no authority, someone takes the authority. So maybe that's the association.
I mean, a power vacuum.
But it also implies that I agree with you to a certain extent, but many of these anarchists believe in being armed to the teeth and defending their own property. So the idea that someone else could come and threaten you, it's a question of, yes, bad people exist and people try to act with the power to subjugate you. And do you have the power to defend yourself? I'm not an anarchist.
Anarchy is kind of like a house of cards. Like it's very vulnerable. And that's why I think people are afraid of it, because if someone does decide to seize power, it's just basically the whole tower comes crumbling down. There's no more anarchy. It's full authoritarian, strongest ones in charge now.
So I'm going to read this one super chat real quick before we jump to the next story, because it is the speculation as to what happened. The killer had bad back pain, turned 26, hence he lost his parents' insurance, got delusional, and killed the CEO instead of finding a job. Don't overthink this. I've also heard that there's so many rumors, man. We don't know.
Yeah.
Some are claiming that because of the back pain, he started taking psychedelics because he was trying to relieve himself, that he had problems with getting the surgery paid for. He got radicalized, took various drugs to alter his mind because of the pain or for whatever, and then came to some deluded reality. But let's jump to this from TMZ. Taylor Lorenz on Brian Thompson. I'm not calling for murder, but I'm not sorry about it either. So she basically tells these people that everybody's happy. But you know what? Instead of playing this, I want to play a clip from Piers Morgan, and you can hear it much more succinctly and simply.
I do believe in the sanctity of life, and I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it feels like...
Seriously?
I mean...
Joy at a man's execution?
Maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy. Because again,
we're watching the footage. How can this make you joyful? This guy's a husband, he's a father, and he's been gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Thousands of Americans that he murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push policies of denying care to the most vulnerable people. And the many millions of Americans that have watched people that I care about suffer and in some cases die because of lack of health care.
So should they all be killed then? Should they all be killed, these healthcare executives? Would that make you even more joyful?
No, that would not.
Well, why not?
And,
why are you laughing?
I think...
Well, I'm laughing because it was an excellent question from Piers Morgan.
Because it wouldn't fix the
You seem to find the whole thing hilarious.
Yeah, she does.
I find your question funny.
A bloke's been murdered in the street. I don't find it funny at all.
I don't find it funny that tens of thousands of Americans die every year and because they are denied life-saving health care from people like the CEO. Now, I want to fix the system.
So, man, there's so much to break down in this dangerous psychopath's rant.
Well, I thought he was a right-winger. So why is she so happy?
Oh, right. I mean, that's the crazy thing is they say he's right-wing, but the left is celebrating this.
They can't figure it out. They got to pick one.
These people are too stupid to understand multi-layered thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She, in her mind, is like, a man that worked for a company at the highest levels died, so she feels joy. Okay, who was the guy? What did he do? What was his job? He was a CEO.
No, yeah.
No, she doesn't no idea.
You probably didn't know he was a husband and father.
She doesn't care.
Yeah. She said that the health insurance agencies were murdering people.
Yep.
They're not. People might be dying, but it's not murder. Murder is a legal definition.
And look, I understand what she's saying about the American healthcare system. I think a lot of people do, but the problem is, like, that is literally how you lose the argument entirely, because now what is going to happen as a result? Is you're going to see some type of magical reform in the healthcare system because of this? No. Well, all that's going to happen is the CEOs are going to double their security. In fact, healthcare CEOs now are something of probably like martyrs to normal people, and now the big people feel bad for them almost, you know? Yeah,
I mean, look, the something that hasn't really been mentioned very frequently in the whole thing here is like, and I'm going to make all the actual libertarians that are watching or that watch, you know, they're going to cry out for joy. But the problems that most people see with the healthcare industry, they're because of government involvement. Your healthcare, your health insurance, or your healthcare should not be tied to you having a job. You shouldn't have.
That is weird.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to have a job to be able to pay to go to a doctor. Like, the costs of everything wouldn't be so high if it wasn't for the fact that you're not allowed to know what the cost is. You're not allowed to go and put it on a market. You look at any kind of.
We got to clarify that. You should have to have a job.
Well, fair enough. Fine.
You need to be able to pay for yourself and your healthcare and buy that service.
My point being that it shouldn't be tied to employment. If you look at LASIK, if you look at any kind of elective surgeries, the price goes down over time because there's competition. When you take healthcare out of the market context and make it something that someone else pays for, and the people that are actually getting the care or giving the care don't actually talk about the price or discuss the price at all, then you're going to see prices skyrocket.
You need competition.
The government should not be involved at all.
In doctorship too. Like, it takes 12 years for someone to become a doctor and cost them $600,000. It's absolutely insane the amount of help that people could be giving each other in this world if we didn't have government regulations of doctorship. It's a little bit of a hot take. A lot of people, you don't want your doctor to be an idiot. It's one of the most important jobs on earth, so they better know what they're doing. But it doesn't take 12 years to figure it out.
Even with all of the regulations surrounding being a doctor, it's still like the third most common cause of death is medical malpractice.
Let me just pull this back in. You know what? I don't know. I don't care. Like, the healthcare system is bad for a lot of reasons, but it is not the fault of a doctor or an insurance company who doesn't provide for you that an illness took your life. Okay, so when Taylor Lorenz says they're murdering people, I'm like, now hold on there a minute. If I pay for a service and do not get it, we got ourselves there a problem, a contractual problem. And if it's tied to my life, we got a big problem. And that's a civil issue, and it's nasty and it's evil, but it's not murder, okay? If a human being, I don't know, contracts some kind of disease, and they are dying. This is the worldview of these leftists. If I go down to, Bogota or go somewhere, and then I get some weird bug lands on me and bites me, and then I get a disease. When I get sick and then go to the hospital and die, no one murdered me. I died from an illness. Humans die. These things happen. If a dude is working in his backyard, or how about this? If a guy is working on, say, like an oil, they're building an oil well, and then in the process, a bunch of pipes fall on him and crush him. If they bring him to the hospital and they can't save his life because of some paperwork, they didn't murder him, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Emergency rooms are obligated by law to treat people. So you're not getting denied life-saving coverage. They're not paying your bills. In many circumstances, there are people who might have like a cancer or treatment. And this is more rare, but it happens where they say, we're not going to pay for this treatment because you're not covered or we're disqualifying you. But it is not as common as these people are claiming it out to be. Overwhelmingly, people get their insurance paid, and we generally don't like these companies because they're kind of dicks about it. And they make a lot of money off of denying claims. Fact, they'll try to avoid paying your claims. But I reject the idea that a CEO personally murdered millions of people because humans suffer detriments to their health every day.
She backtracked on that term murder. She stopped calling it murder right after she did, just like she stopped saying she had joy right after she said she did.
You know she does.
Girl doesn't have very high intelligence.
Why does she use the term murder? Because then what's the implication if someone is murdering like thousands of people a year, then what does that justify against them? Maybe that's what it's about.
Self-defense.
Right? Yeah.
And that's what the left says on everything. When they go out and they burn buildings down, they call it self-defense.
Exactly.
And they're like, no, it isn't.
Right.
They're insane. You know what the thing is? I think the real challenge is if Taylor, I would love to pay an all-expense paid trip for you, Taylor Lorenz, to insert any third world country. I think we'd want to do a tour of like 3 different locations in different regions where you would then live for 1 week in these places, come back to the United States. She'd look around and say, this is the greatest country that ever has been. I love everything about it. Our healthcare industry is the best. I love how they're talking about Canada's got free healthcare. Why can't we have it? And then you take a look at Canada and it's like man denied basic health treatment, because the government's refusing to pay for it. So they get private healthcare anyway. And now they're offering medical assistance and dying. Not to mention they don't have access to the same treatments we do. These people are the epitome of spoiled rich kids. That is, they may not be rich, but they were born in the United States, and they don't realize how the rest of the world lives. One of my favorite Family Guy jokes, they were doing a Family Guy bit where it was 200 years ago, and Peter goes, oh, stubbed my toe. Guess I'll die. That's how it used to be. You'd get an infection, and then you'd go septic and die. You'd scrape your leg, and they'd be like, gotta cut your leg off. Yeah. They didn't even realize they could have poured whiskey on your leg and just water, and then you probably would have been fine. Kind of crazy. So these people live in a golden castle of wealth standing on the shoulders of giants, and then think she has a right that she says she wants people to die for not giving her more wealth. That is the danger of leftists. They are insane.
Yeah, it's completely insane. And you find that in a lot of the leftist ideology stuff, though. Like, they talk about the evils of capitalism as, like, the reason that there have been so many deaths, like, there have been deaths because there wasn't clean water, and there's been deaths by preventable disease, and deaths by starvation and stuff. And it's like, look, these deaths would happen in the absence of capitalism. The fact that we don't have vastly more deaths because of all of those things is because of capitalism. It is because of market.
You could argue that the capitalistic food and drug industry has capitalized on making people sick with toxic chemicals and then selling them a pharmaceutical to try and treat that and get into this cycle of illness and decline, and then barely keep patient for life. You could argue that, but that's not capitalism that's doing it. That's the corrupted medical establishment that's taken advantage of capitalism.
And even still, like, that particular thing, again, I'm going to talk like a libertarian again, but like, we talk about how much sugar there is in food that you get and stuff, and that's because of corn subsidies. It's because the government pays farmers to produce corn, and with that corn they make high fructose corn syrup. That's why high fructose corn syrup is in everything. So and to your other point about the possibility that capitalism has caused people to, not have food or whatever. The reason we have 7 billion people on Earth now, well, there's 2, is because of oil and because of markets. If we didn't have oil to be able to properly transport, store in plastics, and move all these food products around the world, we wouldn't have this many people. And you wouldn't have this many people if it wasn't for the fact that we have capital markets that can exchange goods from country to country. So the idea that capitalism is a net negative, I think that's just completely ridiculous. There are definitely bad things about our system, but that doesn't mean that capitalism as a whole is a bad thing.
Corporatocracy.
She's basically saying that these healthcare CEOs are murdering every single person around the world.
Ridiculous.
Or not treating their treatable diseases.
Completely ridiculous. Just entirely ridiculous. The idea that people die, which it's awful for that people suffer and die, but like, that's part of the human condition. And that's another thing that the left constantly rails against. They don't rail against capitalism. They're actually railing against the human condition, and they blame capitalism.
Also, wasn't she a journalist that was known for doxing people? Tim, you know that, right?
For Libs of TikTok.
Yeah.
Let me pull up this story from Semaphore. So, of course, we are talking about Taylor Lorenz. Boy, is she getting a lot of airtime for being a nut job. But it's being reported now that she and Vox are parting ways. Now, they say it has nothing to do with her screed about wanting more death and being joyful at the murder of a man who had children. But I do think this termination, it shows the world is healing. And as bad as, and we're, I'm not trying to be funny, but this is a person who thinks, she said on TMZ, the people want this. So then why do the people feel this way? When she's saying the people, she's not talking about you or me. They exclude normal individuals with moral foundations. She is referring to her communist cohort.
Yep.
I don't think she's literally in her mind thinking me and all my communist friends. She's in her mind thinking the people is all of the good individuals that support what I think, and all people who disagree are fascists anyway. They're not the people. They're evil. So she's going on TV shows saying, we all want this to happen. We are all the people. Well, now she's losing her job. I want to make sure this is clear. So the story is Vox Media is ending its deal to distribute Taylor Lorenz's podcast and YouTube show. The company had a short-term partnership with the high-profile tech reporter that is set to expire at the beginning of the year, Semaphore has learned. The company announced its partnership with Lorenz earlier this year, which Axios dubbed the distribution deal a huge win for the company as it tried to partner with premier podcast talent on distribution, not monetization and strategy. Still, while Lorenz remains one of the most talked about journalists in digital media, her social media persona is a magnet for criticism both for her and the media companies associated with it. Vox's decision not to renew the show was made before her comments this week, in which she appeared to justify the killing of the UnitedHealthcare CEO as an expression of public discontent. She did more than that, dude. I don't believe for a second it's unrelated. So they're saying the decision not to renew the show was made beforehand. Okay, maybe, but the chick's been nuts for a long time. And this is not the first time she said absolutely insane things. But I'm going to be honest. I don't believe it. I think they're saying that because they want to avoid any kind of legal dispute or backlash. There are a lot of leftists that are celebrating this. They want to disassociate from this lunatic, and they don't want... I'll put it this way. If I was running a podcast company, hey, I am. If I had someone like Taylor Lorenz here and she was saying these things, I would also not be like, because she's called for the death of these people and celebrated, we're saying we don't want to work with her, because then all of those people will target you. You get swatted, you get bomb threats. Fortunately for me, I don't hire people like Taylor Lorenz, so I'm not worried about it.
And the left... Go ahead.
I think Vox is murdering her because she just lost her health insurance. So there you go.
Proves it.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think that especially when Taylor Lorenz goes out, you say that about a healthcare CEO, right? You're going up and saying like, probably things that could maybe catch a lawsuit against a industry with a lot of power. I think Vox is protecting itself, but maybe it's also possible that Vox is just out of money because frankly, I didn't know they were even still around. Maybe they just don't have the budget to keep her podcast.
I think NBC invested hundreds of millions into Vox.
Because I heard a story like, what was it, a year or two ago that they were going under, so maybe that's what happened.
Well, then they got bought.
Maybe.
I haven't heard anything about Vox being having issues with financial issues. I do think that it's got, I mean, even if it doesn't have anything to do with this specific statement.
She's just a nut job.
She is. She's a crazy person. If you look at the stuff that she's just last week or whatever, she was saying stuff on Blue Sky that was completely insane. Let me try and pull it up. She's just.
Well, while you're looking it up, I just want to stress. You can make fun of Vox all you want, but I bought some BuzzFeed stock when Vivek got in there, and I am way up.
Oh, that's cool.
Really?
Yeah, over 100%.
Vox raised $100 million from Penske Media. Is it Penske Media in 2023, or they were raising
Before that, it was NBC, wasn't it?
I don't know. Penske owns 20% of the company. They came up with big money last year. I have empathy for a lot. I just tend to have empathy. I tend to feel what other people are feeling, but this girl's hard. It's challenging to have empathy for this girl because I feel like she's closed off either with psychoactives that she's taken, like pharma, but the stupid shit that this girl says over and over makes me want to distance myself from her.
Well, you have to imagine too, like behind closed doors, they're probably telling her many times throughout the years, "Hey, stop being a lunatic. Like this is a little too radioactive. You can't be saying stuff." And then she loses her job finally because she can't tone it down. I mean,
it's not just dumb, like she said the wrong thing. It's vicious.
Right.
It's about murder. It's about like finding joy in the murder of a guy.
Right.
It's crazy talk. And you try and empathize with a demon, you're going to get a little demonic. So sometimes you got to distance yourself from people like that. I'm sorry, Taylor. You could make it up to me.
Evil.
Don't be sorry.
What's that?
I said Ian recognizing evil.
Yeah. Sometimes you can heal evil by being there for it, but sometimes it makes you, but as you do that, it makes you more evil. And sometimes it's just like the exhaustion of this girl. Like I'd be happy to have a conversation with her.
I think people can be redeemed. I think that correct me if I'm wrong, 'cause I'm not as well learned on Christianity, but I believe it's a core tenet of Christianity that people can be forgiven and can be redeemed.
There's a church called Christ the Redeemer. A friend of mine went to Redeemer High School, in middle school. It's all about redemption. A lot of that religion's about redemption.
It was the
Is it the name of the
That's what it was.
Oh, a raw dog in the air.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just funny and she's nuts. But
yeah.
Isn't Christ the Redeemer the gigantic statue in Rio in Brazil?
I think so.
Yeah, Cristo Redento.
Yeah. Yeah, massive.
It's a
Yeah,
big
the
step.
Redeemer, man.
So-
Yeah, of course people can be redeemed. That's a great
That's why,
story.
like, right now with Cenk Uygur, a lot of conservatives are just outright like, nope, never welcome him. He's clearly audience farming and all that stuff. And I don't disagree, right? So Matt Walsh and I think Mike Cernovich both said Cenk is trying to go onto these shows and say, like, look, I understand. But what their attitude is, nah, he saw Anna Kasparian getting a massive following, getting way better numbers, getting praised for being reasonable, and he's chasing after that after realizing he's on the wrong side of history. And my attitude is, yes, I completely agree. And I've been saying the whole time, these people who, with the respect I can give Cenk, he's got a big platform, but with limited respect. These are the people that are going to march in lockstep with the machine. We want them to fall in line for what we are saying. And now they're realizing that. So what you need to understand with these people, in the event, and as is largely about like Taylor Lorenz and being crazy and how she got ousted from corporate media, but for any one of these people who is now having a come to the light moment where, geez, Bill Maher is trying to play that game, Jon Stewart, my attitude is, I never believed you were sincere. I never believed you had a backbone. But so long as you are shutting up and saying the things that are true and correct, it's better you are right than virtuous. We just need to make sure we recognize these people will flip on a dime the moment the wind blows the other direction. But for the time being, we want to align the power they have in media behind what we think is good to maximize our potential. Simply saying, I don't believe Cenk is a true reformer, but if he's going to start telling his audience that we are right, and it pushes people in this direction, we are winning.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to tell Cenk, he's basically saying, look, I'm in a bad spot. I'm going to say what you want me to say. I'll be like, it's cowardly, but, good.
Look, we've been saying on this podcast for the better part of 2 years at least, we're looking for ways to convince the normal Democrats to move away from the woke, the crazy leftists, people like Taylor Lorenz, people that say things like revolutionaries. We want normal Democrats to start being normal Democrats again. And they're still out there. I truly believe that they are. And I think that they're sick of the woke stuff. I think that they're sick of the cancel culture. And hopefully the fact that there was such a sweep for the Republicans in this past election, hopefully that shows that it is good business for people like Cenk and others to say, you know what, maybe I need to moderate on my opinions. Maybe I need to moderate on my rhetoric, and they will, and hopefully their audiences will hear more reasoned takes. Look, Anna Kasparian, it took multiple things for her to start saying, wait a minute, I got a problem. There was the fact that she was sexually assaulted, and there was the fact that she was the birthing person stuff that she had to go through. And each time the left attacked her, they didn't look at her and say, no, Anna, you're wrong, and blah, blah, blah. They attacked her, called her terrible names, and et cetera, et cetera. And then there was then she started looking at things like the Kyle Rittenhouse issue, where Cenk even still has a terrible opinion on that. He was here the other day, and I was like, why do you? He's like, we have this. I still think Rittenhouse was a bad guy. I'm like, why? But either way, she looked at the evidence and she was like, I was wrong on that. If they're going to actually take realistic perspectives or look at the honest, the facts on the ground, and they're gonna change their opinion, and they're gonna tell their audience, and even fight with their audience some, and tell their audience, look, you should look at things from multiple sources. You shouldn't just listen to left-leaning sources. That's a good thing for America.
I think when we get into this game of trying to judge people's intentions, we can do that all day, right? Anyone can point at anyone and say they're a grifter. I'm not really curious, honestly, in that whole conversation. I think you guys are right. It matters what they're saying to their audiences, not necessarily their intentions, because we're never going to know that, right? Yep. Trump could pass a bill, let's say, to build the border wall, right? And people could say, oh, it's because of this reason or it's that reason. But the end result is what? You pass the bill to build the border wall. And that's the type of thing that matters, is where are they pushing their audiences? I'll tell you guys a story, actually. When I was very young, I sort of started off on kind of like the crypto populist left. Like that's sort of the beginning of my political journey. And I remember that, I think it was Bill Maher, Sam Harris debate against, who was it? Ben Affleck over radical Islam. That was one of the moments that actually kind of pushed me into conservative ideology. And that was done by what? A liberal asshole who was like just saying something we still to this day like judge Bill Maher's intentions or what is he doing. But if he's speaking to the audience and the audience moves in a certain direction, it's a good direction, I don't really think it's productive to care about what his intentions are, because it doesn't matter to me.
Insofar as we recognize that should the wind blow the other direction, they'll
Absolutely.
untrustworthy
Yeah.
people.
Right.
Yeah, and selecting leadership, it's important to gauge intention, but just for the outcome, it is irrelevant.
Yeah,
Well, especially in media. Like, that's the thing where intention matters the least. It's like, what are they saying? Where's it moving the conversation? That's really what matters, in my opinion.
Results, not rhetoric. What they're saying, just like you said, what they're saying is important, but are they actually moving people towards the center, moving people away from the woke, endorsing actual liberal ideas, like classically liberal ideas? The left has been very against the fundamental principles of the Constitution, like things like freedom of speech, the idea of property rights, those the innocent until proven guilty. The left has totally abandoned that. These are things that the normal people in America still actually value, and we need the people that have considered themselves Democrats to actually say, yes, we reject that. And if Cenk and Anna and people like that help that process along, more power to them.
I think it reflects to the conversation that's happening in the whole Democrat Party since the election, which is, and I've been saying this, they have two choices, right? They can double down on all the stuff that got them to lose the election, or they can try to wake up and be a more normal party. And either way, it's a good thing, because if they just double down on what they've been doing, they're going to lose. But if they kind of move a little bit to the center, then we're going to have a healthier political conversation. And yeah,
Absolutely.
That might make them a little bit more difficult to beat. But at the same time, if they do win the election, we don't have to be worried that we're going to lose the freaking country the next. So either way, I think it's a good outcome. So
Let's jump to this next story from the New York Times. Daniel Penny is acquitted in the death of Jordan Neely on subway. My friends, the world is healing. Mr. Penny choked Mr. Neely in a minutes-long struggle on the floor of the F train. The case reflected the pathologies of post-pandemic New York. Well, we've got this from Nick Sorter. Daniel Penny is speaking out for the first time, and he and his lawyers, as they celebrate a massive victory, he was trying to help people on the train, and he did. Here's the video of the man in question celebrating.
How you feeling?
Great.
Yeah.
He's feeling good. He's feeling good. He's feeling good.
he's hammered.
What's up? Come together.
I would be.
Same.
How's it going? How's it feel?
Feels great. He's finally got the justice he's deserved.
Did you think it was going to happen?
Sorry?
Let me get away from the camera.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want to say the wrong
this
thing.
this should have happened probably on day one, but the important thing is it happened. So we can't control the timing of it, but we can certainly savor the outcome.
And why do you think it was not guilty?
That's
Instead
good.
of-
That's that guy.
Well, he's not guilty on a few different reasons. Because his actions were justified. He was trying to help people on that train, and he did. And number two, he's not responsible for the death because the death was caused by a lot of other factors that we tried to present with a lot of clarity, such as the K2 abuse and the sickling crisis, and cardiac issues. Not to mention the paranoid schizophrenia, which only added to that impact. So I'm just glad that the jury was able to truly evaluate that as a potential cause of death, and that Danny was justified in the actions that he took.
Yeah, he was. And so not guilty. Now, leftists are already calling for riots, calling for violence. BLM supporters are posting videos on TikTok saying that they have to get violent now. Much similar, I would say it reflects very much so the UnitedHealth CEO's statements on violence. And I'm surprised we haven't heard of riots breaking out in New York already, but who knows?
I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the general culture has shifted so much the past 4 years that there's not really the same appetite to listen to those leftists out there as there was before. And there's more of an appetite, I would argue, too, probably by NYPD to just have less tolerance for this type of stuff. I think you might see some isolated incidents, but this whole situation is kind of a indicator of how much our country's changed since 2020, because I think if that happened in 2020, you probably get a conviction, most likely. Yep. I think the situation, the political pressure on the jurors was significantly less than it would have been 4 years ago. That's number one. And then number two, I just think, again, the appetite to riot from a lot of these big cities is just not there anymore. I mean, look at what happened when Trump won the election. Nothing happened, right? Yeah. Their appetite to do this stuff is kind of dead, and I think that's a good thing.
I'm not sure why. I as a guess, I would say because the without the BLM agitprop, the propaganda that went along with the the initial 2020 riots and stuff like that, without that kind of stuff, it doesn't really motivate the people. But I wonder if people don't have the appetite because a lot of the people that had bought into the idea that thousands of black men per year were being killed, thousands of unarmed black men were being killed by the cops every year, which was blatantly false. I wonder if the average kind of activist person was made aware that that was just not even remotely close to true. And so the narrative on the ground that there was that even LeBron James was saying was just totally false,
The shutdowns from COVID made people crazy. And I wonder if people even are able to recognize how crazy the world had gone for those 3 years. And it was like served as an inoculation of the consciousness. People have come out of that with this new skepticism and lack of desire for tyranny. Like they are just like looking for a reason to right the ship. And this is an example.
I mean, I was shocked when we saw that video of Taylor Lorenz on Piers Morgan. She wasn't wearing a mask. Because she thinks
just
she
raw
is.
dog in the
Her
air.
immune system has improved.
She?
Yep.
No, I mean,
Getting stronger.
she is getting people sick.
Yeah.
You know, what if someone in the other unit at her apartment complex breathes?
Yeah.
No, and she's
What if they got a scratch?
talking like,
But
you know,
you're right. She wasn't
spewing her
wearing a
disease.
mask. She
I know,
wasn't
how
wearing a
dare
mask.
she.
Good for you, Taylor. You look great without a mask. You
No,
don't
she's
need it
long
anymore.
argued she has a right to not wear a mask in private settings. It's only in public settings she has to wear a mask because she went insane from COVID.
Can't believe
Yeah,
it.
COVID.
Dude, yeah, look, I am done with this. If I go to a restaurant and I see someone wearing a mask, nope. I'm
At
gonna
the
be like,
airport,
I
it's
will.
very
That person will
strange.
not serve me.
It used to be like I'd see the occasional, I don't want to like stereotype, but it would sometimes be an Asian person. Not always, but it was like common in Japan or in
Yeah.
China to wear masks.
If you go to
back-
Japan, that's very, very normal. If you're
2014.
sick, so that way you don't like sneeze or whatever. And honestly, when COVID first hit, before it became like a thing, I was like, well, if it would be kind of cool if people in America started wearing masks if they're sick, so that way they don't sneeze, because it's kind of cool in Japan. And then it became a political thing, and now I'm just like, well, I don't want masks at all.
And also, if it was even serving the process like the wrong mask, it would just be like socially, just like virtue signaling, like, hey, look at me. And it's like, dude, that piece of cloth is not only carrying fecal, like putrefactive bacteria on the inside of it, it's not sealing it, right?
In Japan, they don't wear it trying to seal anything. They're just like, so that way they don't like sneeze and get anything on people. So that way they don't like, because if you sneeze and you sneeze in your arm, you're sneezing onto your clothing, So if you have the mask on and you sneeze, then like you could go ahead and take it off and toss it and put another one on, like use it as if it's a tissue that's already on your face.
I think the reason I even brought that up is because you mentioned the riots in 2020. I think those were like a direct result of the shutdowns from the COVID response, the government overreach and they didn't lock people. Some countries did lock people in their homes, literally.
But in New York, these apartments are microscopic. Some like a lot of people, like the friends that I had, it's a studio bedroom the room is 20 feet by 20 feet in a lot of these places. And it's like your kitchen is, you have a kitchen, that's it. It's a kitchen with a TV and a couch in it. You're locked in there every single day. Sure, you can technically go outside, but there's no restaurants, there's no stores, you can't go anywhere. What do you do? So when the riots happened, people's brains snapped and they went out and they went nuts. With all of that being said, this time, Daniel Penny was acquitted. I see this as a major victory. There still is a concern, I brought it up last week when they tried pulling this scheme, that already this sends a signal they will use the procedure as the punishment. Mm-hmm. But this still shows a trend in a positive direction where I think in a couple of years we do see an end to this type of psychotic behavior. And hopefully we return back to a society that says you have responsibility in your life.
It is. He's such a hero. I will say that, man. Daniel Penny, what he did, if it's true, what happened, and it seems like it was, that he protected people on the subway. That this guy was terrorizing people on the subway, literally domestic terrorism at its finest, saying he was going to kill someone and go to jail for it. And then 3 guys had to hold him down, including Daniel Penny and 2 other dudes who never really got pinned in this somehow. And everyone was turned out unharmed except for the guy with paranoid schizophrenia who was on K2, which is like spice. It's a type of synthetic cannabinoid. It's nasty stuff. I've had it before. It is nasty stuff.
The sad reality, though, is like, at what point does he get his life back? And that's still an open question because just a couple of days ago, actually, I believe Jordan Neely's father is now trying to sue him. So now they're trying to take him to civil court. I don't think he's a guy with a lot of money to be paying all these legal fees. And then, a lot of civil courts in this country are totally broken. So I would say even if he didn't get the criminal conviction, he might get the civil one. How's he going to pay that out? So, we'll see. But yeah, definitely this is a big step. I kind of thought I saw this as a crossroads moment for the city of New York because it's like, do they want to decide to go the full-blown, I know we don't want to use the word anarchy, but you know what I mean, route, or do they want to start taking steps in the right direction? And I think what you're seeing in a lot of Democrat cities in this country, I recently, I went to Detroit, for instance, over the summer for the Turning Point USA event, and I was totally expecting Detroit to be like everything I imagined, and it was the opposite. Like, it was actually relatively clean. It was nice. I think even in these Democrat cities, even if they're not voting Republican nationally or even locally, you are seeing an increased appetite even from Democrat voters to want to kind of fix things. Look at the anti-crime proposition in California. That passed with 70% this time around. And that's a good thing because I think revitalizing our cities is probably one of those steps needed to take the country back as a whole.
What's the anti-crime prop in California?
So remember how California, they were doing the $950 thing where if you steal under $950, they're not going to go after it. So basically that made it so, now those thefts are going to be prosecuted again. And that
retroactively?
I don't think retroactively,
okay,
but I think going forward.
Restoring it.
Yeah.
So I had this idea when that happened. I said
70%, by the way, in a Democrat state, like everyone voted for it. Yeah.
When that happened, I said, here's an idea. Make everything in the store cost $1,000 and give a discount to people when they buy it. Someone did that.
Really? That's
Someone
awesome.
actually did it. They put everything in the store is $950, discount for honest customers.
$1,000.
So that way they could get it prosecuted. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Man, that's a great example of society becoming normal again. They're just like, violent crime, and that theft is considered a violent crime. It's no good. It does not stand, and that is the detriment of society.
I want to say to everybody here, take a look at your investment accounts for those that have them, because I'm going to say this. In 2020, when we were all for Trump, looking at all these problems, we were years ahead of the normies.
Oh, yeah.
No disrespect, normies, but we were years ahead of them. 2024 comes around, they catch up, Trump ends up winning for much of the same reason. The Wall Street Journal says the gender ideology stuff was a sleeper issue. Abortion ended up mattering. The democracy ended up mattering, but in the direction towards Trump. When polled, if there was if democracy was at risk, more people voting for Trump said it was than Democrats, meaning the lawfare against Trump was viewed. Now, in 2020, we all knew this stuff. We all knew the impeachment was a scam. We all knew that wokeness was bad. We were 4 years ahead of everybody. So think about where we are now and where we will be in 4 years.
I should make a little clarification. I said that theft is a violent crime, and technically it's not, even though stealing someone's livelihood and taking away their food could be sort of like a passive form of violence. I mean,
it's literally not a violent crime if depending on what you're doing and how you're stealing, right? So like mugging is a violent crime, but larceny is not a violent crime.
Robbery, aggravated.
Actually, not
robbery. So robbery is
could-
a violent crime. Is that considered?
If you're robbing a person,
But not a store.
yeah.
Is that even considered robbery if you go into a store and take?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Robbery is a violent crime that involves taking property from another person using force or threat of force. So
Yeah. So if you go into a store and take stuff off the walls,
that's shoplifting. That's
Yeah,
not
you're
robbery.
right.
That's shoplifting.
Yeah, that's usually considered theft or even.
if you have a mask on, though, is there considered threat?
It's still shoplifting.
I think that'd be
Petty theft?
described as petty theft.
Which is a form of violent crime, theft?
No.
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 Look, I'm trying, but maybe there's a reason it's not.
Robbery.
Yeah, because you're not
Did you
actually
see the
threatening
video
violence
of
then.
the woman in there like knocking all the bottles of alcohol off the thing, and the guy just goes up to like the owner of the store and
Slugs
just
her.
decks her in the face? People are like, someone had to do it, and I'm like,
Or the little girl doing it.
What's that?
And there's that little girl smashing everything in the store, and
Walmart.
they're going, don't do it, stop filming her, leave her alone. You don't know what she's going through. And I'm like, look, I don't think you should hurt the child, but any adult could literally just grab her arms and hold her so she stops and say, look, I'm not trying to hurt you, but you got to stop. But I got to be honest, I ain't doing it. How many of you guys would walk up to a little black girl who was smashing up a store and grab her arms to stop her from doing anything?
Not for a
Probably
store.
get charged with murder. I mean,
I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to laugh at the store and be like, look, man, this is why I don't live in these cities. Y'all vote for this stuff. And then what I hear from a lot of these people, like a lot of conservatives who are like back the blue, I'm like, dude, you know those cops would arrest you. Those cops arrested Daniel Penny. Those cops arrested Trump. How is it that Donald Trump is falsely charged with these BS charges and the cops are like, don't know, don't care, Trump, you're going to jail?
Yeah,
how come they weren't like, I refuse to be party to whatever it is you're doing?
The arrest of Daniel Penny is wild. Like, I think it was actually his interrogation that got him exonerated. And there's probably other evidence too, but once that got released, I don't know if we've ever played it on the show. It's pretty fascinating.
Why wasn't that every single cop saying, I will not be party to whatever it is you're doing, Daniel Penny? And they said, then it's your job. Okay. Because these cops are not good people. I'm not saying all cops are bad. I'm not saying all cops are not good people. I'm saying the cops in New York who are part of a mechanism where the guy at the top is appointed by a Democrat to enact Democrat policies, when they illegally stole, when de Blasio stole taxpayer money to paint Black Lives Matter in front of the Trump Tower.
Yep.
And then put 27 police officers to guard it. All of that was illegal, and those cops don't care. I have no sympathy for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to understand that ultimately police, because the argument I always hear, the counter argument I always hear to you, Tim, is like, well, they don't really agree with it, though. You know, don't you know most cops are Republicans? They're in agreement. But it's like, at the end of the day, what is their job? Their job is to be enforcement mechanisms of the state. And if the state is run by the people we don't like, then they're going to be doing the things we don't like. And so it's it's not an animosity thing towards personal police officers, but as an institution, yeah, they are against us in a lot of these areas.
Imagine a couple of crime family members mercilessly beat a child with an inch of his life. And then when you go to arrest him, he says, hey, don't look at me, like the boss told me to do it. It's not my fault. And they went, he's right. The boss told him to do it. I mean, he didn't want to do it, but they told him to, so he had to. So he's not criminally responsible. In what reality do we say police officers are not responsible for the actions they take? It's insane to me. And I know people are going to say, like, Daniel Penny was charged with the crime. Oh, spare me, dude. Anybody with eyes saw that Daniel Penny did not commit any crimes.
Yeah.
And now he had to go through all this to justify or to prove it is insane. All that needed to happen was for each and every one of those cops to be like, boss, I ain't charging this guy. He didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. You find somebody else, because I'm not going to be dealing with the aftermath of this. So right now I got people on Twitter and they're saying the prosecutor should go to jail. I think every cop involved in his detainment should go to jail too. I'm done. When Chronister got the nomination for the head of DEA and then the story broke. The story we already knew, but the story went wild, that he had arrested a pastor for trying to host church services during COVID lockdown. He got denied and rejected from that position. Everybody was willing to line up against a sheriff for arresting a pastor. Where are the same calls for the cops who are facilitating the injustice against Daniel Penny?
I think if cops got arrested for arresting someone that was found innocent, in hindsight, they'd stop arresting people, which could be a big problem, because there are a lot of people they're not.
It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. And in this regard, I think everybody saw the video and knew what happened and said, we will not be a society that will penalize one man of three. 3 guys detained Jordan Neely. Only 1 got charged. We're not talking about an issue where we heard a story where 2 guys got into a fight and someone died. What do we do? If a cop arrests those people, totally get it. We're talking about Daniel Penny as one of 3 people who subdued a man, and only he got charged. And I will say it's because he's white. The other guys
he's tall and beautiful. Yeah, he got
and the other guys who held down Jordan Neely got nothing, no charges. This was a pure perversion of justice. And the cops who knew all of these details and said, what happened? A guy threatened to murder people, said he wasn't scared to go to jail. He was on drugs. They said they wouldn't render advanced aid because they were concerned of getting AIDS. I'm not exaggerating. They said they gave him chest compressions but wouldn't give him mouth-to-mouth because they didn't want to get AIDS. That could be a contributing factor to why he died. Then he dies. Daniel Penny gives an interview where he doesn't even know the guy died and said, look, I'm not trying to kill the guy. He's just threatening people, so I held him down. 2 other guys held him down, and they did not get charged. Now the narrative from Black Lives Matter is that it's racist oppression, ignoring the fact that 2 other non-white men were subduing Jordan Neely as well, stopping him from fighting back. This was clearly political, racist BS, and every single cop who said, I am still going to violate the rights of Daniel Penny should be charged.
There's people that are saying that self-defense is now legal in New York. I don't care what anyone says. Like, that is still a risk. Like, Daniel Penny's been in custody and dealing with this for the past 8 months or something like that.
And you could argue still he got lucky in the sense that he didn't get convicted. Yeah,
it's not legal. You need to get serious changes in the DA's office and possibly or probably in the police force as well before you can say, okay, yeah, self-defense is legal. And you probably need some changes to your,
You see you saw that other guy who stabbed somebody on a train and didn't get charged? That was a big part of the story. There was another man who was
same
black.
situation, but he was black.
Yep. Yeah. A guy was threatening people, confronted him. He somehow stabbed him. The guy died. No charges. And so that's what I'm talking about. The cops had no problem being like, okay, this guy stabbed and killed the guy. We're not going to do anything here. And I understand people are going to say, yeah, it's the leadership, Tim. And I'm like, okay, so if you're a cop and you're looking at 3 men subduing a guy, and they say only charge the white guy, and you go, you got it, boss. Oh, you're a bad person. You're evil. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care what anybody says. You should be like, hey, man, find somebody else. I ain't doing it.
Well, I guess the counter argument to that is usually like, well, how are they going to feed their family, right? So like my take on this has always been, I understand that the police have a job to do, whatever, but it's just like, I'm not going to sit here and say I back the blue or wave that, a police flag when it's like, well, it's kind of complicated, right? Because it's like, yeah, I understand you guys have a job to do, but still objectively you're enforcing tyranny. So I'm not anti-police, but don't expect me to like give you a medal for arresting,
No, I think they should be arrested. I think they should be criminally charged. I think violation of rights. I think, you want to make an argument about qualified immunity, that stuff. The only way things like this stop, you want a virtuous society, it's a cultural shift. We need to say we do not tolerate.
But in a city like New York, couldn't BLM do that in the reverse?
Well,
right?
yeah. Could Daniel Penny file a civil suit against the city of New York for false, for some sort of violation?
I think that's the angle.
The issue ultimately becomes why my principal position is I'm not going to live in cities like that, and I retreat to you get what you deserve, because you're correct. The leadership of New York has created the situation. I personally think they're in violation of the Constitution, and Donald Trump, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, whoever should launch. They announced Harmeet Dillon as the US attorney for civil rights. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that she can pursue violation of rights and go after people in New York for what they did to Donald Trump. I'm hoping the federal government can say, I don't care what the stupid crackpot morons in your city voted for. There is a constitution in this country, and you cannot get away with stealing taxpayer dollars to paint an ideological message in your street and then fund 27 cops to do that. That is stealing public funds. There needs to be federal investigations for these perverted actions in government. So whatever, man. That's why ultimately I just say you are right, Vince, that the left and BLM, this happened because they demand it and the city is scared of them and they don't care. So I just choose not to live there. And the people who want to live there, when these things happen to them, I say, guys, if you support these cops and say the cops should be allowed to do this, the people who are chatting saying, don't blame the cops, Tim, that's fine. When the cop comes and cracks you over the skull and says, my boss told me to do it, I won't defend you. I don't care. And you'll tell me it's probably not going to happen. You're probably right. It won't happen.
Well, that's why my position on the police is kind of like almost neutral, right? Because it's like, I understand my main gripe is with the state, but they're enforcers of the state, so I'm not going to really love them for it or hate them for it.
It's like hating the club when it's the guy swinging the club. Like the cop's supposed to be a neutral arm of the government, but it's a human being, and they have discernment. They have the ability to not arrest the guy if they think it's time to not arrest the guy, and they have in the opposite. They're supposed to arrest the guy if they think, the situation deems it. So they're not truly neutral, but they're supposed to be as close to it as possible, I guess.
Police, I don't know that police are supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to carry out the law, and the law's not really neutral.
But I think the problem is with the law.
They are supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to be neutral arbiters of the law, but they're not, because they're appointed by Democrats in big cities.
That's true.
And there you go.
They're like neutral arbiters of a non-neutral legal system. So net non-neutrality.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that maybe they're supposed to be, but the police haven't been neutral in quite a long time.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by they're not neutral?
The police are gonna be like, well, I'll let this guy off today. I feel like how they feel. They're gonna if you are charismatic, they'll let people off.
Politically neutral, in reference to what the police are supposed to do, is that they're not going to say, I arrest Democrats and let Republicans go, or vice versa.
No, but I think that police will make assumptions based on those things, and they'll say, well, this guy, I don't like the way this guy looks or whatever, and stuff like that. So I think that's it's just human. Maybe it's just their fact that they're human, but they're going to have biases.
I think I'd rather have biased human cops than neutral robot cops that just do exactly what the politicians want them to do. I feel safer with the human element being like, this one's gone too far, dude. Like, you did see the Nazi regime fall in line. It was a terrifying example of what humans can do.
They're largely amoral people in like New York City. And I'm not saying immoral. I say amoral, meaning a cop is told, Daniel Penny, they know exactly what happens. A guy was threatening to murder a bunch of people. Those people thanked Daniel Penny for saving their lives. 2 other men assisted Daniel Penny in subduing the man. I want you to go arrest Daniel Penny, not those 2 other men, despite the fact they did the same things. And everyone said Daniel Penny saved their lives. We don't care. He's going to go to prison. The cop goes, you got it, boss. He has no moral structure whatsoever.
Yeah, I think if the guy that was choked, Jordan Neely, had survived, they wouldn't have charged Daniel Penny. They wouldn't have done it.
Of course.
But it was because of the death. It was like an emotional charge.
It's because BLM has political power and the Democrats appoint the police and the police are like, shut up and do as you're told. And the beat cops are amoral. Again, I'm stressing, I'm not saying they're immoral. I'm saying they lack morals. They stand there and say, that's the system. Daniel Penny, you're going to jail. And I'm like, if you had a moral structure, you'd say it is not within my power to arrest this guy. They're cheering for him, guys. What are you talking about? They also have no scruples and no fear. There's no community. Largely what I see as a problem with the police departments is that you go to a small town, what happens? Very small town, the way it used to be back in the day. I'm talking hundreds of years ago.
The cops?
The cop says, he pulls you over, Ian, and he goes, Ian, what are you speeding for? I'm going to see your dad at the bar tonight, and I got to tell him I caught you speeding. I'm going to give you a ticket. What is he going to say to me? And you're going to go, don't tell my dad. And I'll be like, okay, I'm going to tell you what. I'll let you off with a warning, but for the love of all that's holy, you stop speeding. Otherwise, I'm going to your dad. And that's how society was.
It's also, there's no fear of there's much less fear of psychotic dudes wrapped up on pharma, or whatever crazy drugs armed. It's like in a small town, most people are just either they're out drinking or that's
they
it.
know who the crazy guy is and he's in the drunk tank all the time. So in big cities, the cop just says, dude, I don't know you. I don't care. I got kids. Bye. And so we end up with an amoral society. People talk about how we want to fix these things. That's why I say abortion shouldn't be illegal. It should be unthinkable. That's Ron Paul's quote, not mine. The conservatives were like, well, let's ban it. And I'm like, you're not going to change the fact that these far leftists are going to do weird, wacky, crazy things. They're going to keep doing it. What we need is to build a culture of shame. Shame is a good thing. We need to bring shame back. And we need to tell these nasty, I don't care if it's a man or a woman, the whore hookup culture. You are shamed. We shame you for doing these things, okay? And then you feel bad. You say, don't shame me. Nah, I'm going to shame you quite a bit. You're a drug-addicted, overweight communist. You deserve all of the shame and derision that one can muster. And I'm not saying anybody should harm them. I'm saying we're going to tell you with our displeasure with you. And the police who want to engage in these practices, I'm going to express my displeasure with them.
No, I think that's a very legitimate point, because I think a lot of the culture in conservative circles for so long has been back the blue, the police are always good no matter what. And I understand where that grows from, because this is kind of out of the context of crazy left-wing activists wanting to abolish the police constantly. And, basically their gripe with the police is when the police properly enforce the law, it's bad. That's the left's gripe, right? So that leads us into a position where we're usually defending the police. But it is important to understand the nuance that, while simultaneously, police are enforcement arms of the state, and they usually do a lot of bad things that we disagree with because we disagree with the state. And yeah, we should absolutely apply a culture of shame when we disagree with the actions of the police like that. So I agree with you on that. 100%.
What people on the right don't realize is that this is the principal strategy of the left, which has been for 10 years, and we are now putting it aside because our shame has worked better. So the left played this game of police aren't allowed to come to my coffee shop. They were literally saying, we don't like police in general. You can't buy coffee from me. And they would shame them in public. This was cancel culture. This is how wokeness was being enforced. We have pushed back because boycotts are better in the long run, and it forces these companies to reassess. As for institutional power at the government level, there's got to be a degree of shame. As for healthcare and abortion, there has to be a degree of shame. But let's jump to this next story. World War III has already begun. Jamie Dimon warns. Says his team is preparing for serious conflict with China and Russia. 3 assets to protect yourself in 2025. I love that they, this is an article.
Made a listicle?
That's right. This is an article from November, actually, that they reposted because of what just happened in Syria with Bashar al-Assad fleeing, the Assad family fleeing to Moscow and being granted asylum. This is massive. Russia has fled, their vessels have fled the naval base in Tartus, substantially weakening their position in the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. Tartus is Mediterranean, Sevastopol is Black Sea, but their Black Sea flagship was bombed by Ukrainian forces with U.S. and Western assistance. So the question then becomes, with everything we're seeing here, and now we have this issue of Taiwan on high alert, as of today, due to some 90 warships being deployed by China. I think it was 90, some large number. we are looking at a potential dramatic escalation. The question then becomes, with Syria's collapse, this is a principal ally of Russia. Russia stopped protecting them. That's how the rebels were able to, the rebel alliance, they call it, was able to advance into Damascus and take the capital. Russia's pulled out, focusing on its war in Ukraine. One could say it's looking like Russia is being crushed and could lose. The concern then becomes, that appears to be true. If Russia does feel backed into a corner, do they drag in Russia or China and Iran? Does China then make a move on Taiwan while the heavy focus is here in Eastern Europe and the Middle East? Or does Russia say, screw it, if I'm going down, or Putin says, if I'm going down, I'm firing nukes, and then does it?
I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time wrapping my head around the idea of Putin actually firing nukes.
Do you think that if Putin was facing the collapse of the Russian Federation, that he would just be like, guess I lose?
I'm
not saying that facetiously, or would he be like, we're using nukes?
I don't know. I know that there are hardline people in Russia that really think that Putin is too soft with the West. So I don't think that the possibility of nukes is outside. I don't think that it's outside of the realm of possibility. But I don't know if they would use nukes over Ukraine. And I'm not saying that I think they wouldn't.
We're not talking about just Ukraine. We're talking about they've just lost Syria and their military base in Tartus. Their naval fleet has been forced to retreat and fled the area in the past month.
But the part of the reason why they lost the stuff why Syria had to lost the war is because Russia has been so weakened by Ukraine. So by the fight for 2.5 years now, 3 years in Ukraine. So if they were going to use nukes, I feel like they might have already. And I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, but they did lose all this stuff and all these assets in Syria by losing Syria. But the reason they lost Syria is because they're so depleted in Ukraine. So I don't know if they would.
And so let's draw them to bigger picture. Russia, with military interests in Syria and a naval base which gives them access to the Mediterranean, just lost their Mediterranean access and was forced to retreat because they're losing badly in Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's not a question of them saying they wouldn't use nukes over Ukraine. This is they're withdrawing their international military apparatus because they are losing on their home front.
I think they know. I would imagine, and this is again, I'm not an expert or anything like that, but if they're weakened to the point where they can't back Syria anymore, the last thing they want to do is use nuclear weapons, because that would only invite aggression from all of NATO. And so, I mean, if they're just like saying, okay, then we'll just kill everyone on Earth. And I don't know that that's what they want. Because if they can't defend Syria, if they can't support Syria, who's doing the heavy lifting, honestly, they're just sending them money and weapons. If they don't have the military assets to defend Syria, then that means, and they're depleted, and they're fighting in Ukraine for the past 3 years. If they were to go ahead and use a nuke, they're going to draw military action from the whole of NATO.
We'll break it down again. Russia is losing.
Yeah.
They're losing so badly that their external apparatus is being dismantled.
Yes.
And Vladimir Putin is going to go, I guess I lose?
I don't think that it's as simple as I guess I lose.
I surrender?
Because he's not surrendering anything. The option is, do I want to fight NATO?
So they already believe they are fighting NATO. It was Western intelligence.
Do they want to fight directly with NATO?
Right.
Do they want to take on.
But again, the question is, will Putin surrender?
I don't think he's going to surrender, but I don't think I don't think surrender or nuking. I don't think surrender.
Hold on. Honestly, he's lost his external military apparatus to try and shore up. He's asking for up to 100,000 North Koreans to aid him. He is losing. What's the next move that he has? Retreat from Bryansk and Kursk, fall.
So I don't know enough
about Western forces.
I don't know enough about the internal struggles of Russia to make a prediction. But I think that the option of using nukes draws NATO into direct conflict, not proxy war. NATO to direct conflict with
immaterial.
Russia.
The question is, if Vladimir Putin is losing on his own border to the point that his external military apparatus is collapsing, the question he asks himself is, do I escalate the conflict, which would be the next degree would probably be nuclear artillery, howitzers and such. The Russian term, I don't know the Russian term for the artilleries they use. And with warheads, because they are losing, Ukraine is launching incursions and missile strikes into Bryansk and Kursk. Or, I mean, look, the fact that Syria collapsed because they could no longer assist them.
I don't think bigger bombs is going to change it.
So does Russia surrender?
No, I'm not. I don't know. I don't think they surrender, but I also don't think that just using larger bombs gets them out of the situation.
So they're losing. They can lose, or they can escalate use of force.
They don't need to escalate. They're like, it's not.
Right, so they lose.
It's not an option of they lose or they escalate. There is right now. They don't. Right now, the Ukrainians haven't been able to make any kind of gains. If I understand correctly, Russia's been making all of the gains in Ukraine in the past 12 months. The Ukrainians have taken back no territory. So it's not a situation of just give them bigger bombs and they're going to be able to.
It's a question of. Ukraine's obviously in a very, very dire situation, but they're getting infinite funding from the West. Joe Biden
Which
announced,
might
I think
soon
that
go away, though.
Yeah, I think that they're just holding
Perhaps.
on. I think that they'll hold. I think Russia's best play is hold on till Donald Trump comes in.
I agree. That's what I
and
was gonna
then look for a deal.
Yeah, I think that they've lost their Syrian territory, and that theater is gone. But they're going to hold on and try and negotiate some sort of white peace where they just keep territory they've taken.
Which allows Putin to save face, too, so he doesn't have to get desperate.
This is Putin's surrender. When Donald Trump comes in, if Trump says to Putin, the war is over, and cedes some Ukrainian territory or Sevastopol or something like this, the Donbass, the Mariupol, et cetera, Putin has surrendered, especially losing Syria.
They call it a white peace, which is the war
surrender.
just ends. And whoever has whatever, that's just where
it's a
it
surrender.
stays.
We've talked about it quite a bit, but one of the principal components of this conflict is the Qatar-Turkey pipeline, which is rooted in Europe getting cheaper energy. Gazprom controls about a quarter of natural gas into Europe through Ukraine, and this keeps the price. They have a stranglehold on the price of gas, which, according to, and I say this is surface level stuff, the Western intelligence, this is a problem for European economic growth, and again, mainstream sourcing on this, I think there's probably a lot more at play. The idea is that Europe needs to grow as an economic bloc faster to compete with China's rapid growth. And they can't because Russia is jacking up the price of energy, which makes it harder for the people of Europe. So NATO, the U.S. and Europe, wanted to build a gas pipeline through Syria and Turkey into Europe to offset the Gazprom monopoly. Syria said, no, Russia is our ally, and we will not allow you to build a gas pipeline that would disrupt their energy trade. Basically, what do they call? They call Russia a gas station with snow or something like this. They say they just provide energy to Europe, basically. That's the only way they operate. So after Syria says no, because our ally Russia would be upset, the U.S. then, this was publicly stated in The Guardian in 2012, basically the U.S. said, we will overthrow the government of Syria so that we can build this pipeline. The ISIS rises, the country falls into civil war. Barack Obama and seemingly under his leadership, ISIS ends up with a pickup truck from Detroit or whatever. Now, there's a big area of contention is whether or not the West was actually supplying weapons to these terrorists. But as the story goes,
they were.
Everybody says, right, that's the case. And the idea was if Al-Qaeda and ISIS and these other groups continue to gain control of the region, Assad will be removed from power, regardless of your views of whether he's a good or bad person. And with an instability in the region, we can send in the troops, stage an incursion, control it, build our pipeline, and shut down Russia's control of gas. Yeah. This is also why the Nord Stream pipeline got blown up, because they're basically saying Russia is controlling too much interest in Europe, and Europe is saying okay to them. So what ends up happening now is after Syria says no, Iran and Russia teamed up to build a pipeline that would go through Syria and Turkey and strengthen Russian control of energy in Europe. Surprise, surprise, Syrian civil war happens. If now the Syrian government has collapsed, paving the way for the West to come in with Israel now bombing weapon sites and Turkey invading from the north and the U.S. also engaging in strikes, I believe drone strikes. This paves the way, removes all opposition and with Tartus being evacuated, the Russians now have no military option for countering Western forces building a pipeline to shut down their energy trade. Russia lost. The question then becomes, does Vladimir Putin just say, okay, please stop, please, I'm beaten and leave me alone? Or is he a psychotic lunatic the way the media's implied he is? And he says, you have taken Syria, you have shut down you blew up our pipeline, enough, and say, we're moving in. Does this lead to a bigger conflict? I'm not saying it does. I'm saying it's not so simple to say that Trump comes in and he goes, well, gee golly me, I guess it's over. The loss of Syria is massive for Russia's interests. This would mean that if Trump comes in and the war does end, Putin is basically saying, please, I surrender. That's it.
Well, it would be what is going to be surrendered in the final terms. What's going to be given over from Russia to the others? It may be nothing. It might just be like the war is now over. So technically, wouldn't it be a surrender? Whatever was seized before the war is negotiated over has been seized, so it's technically not a surrender. But even though it's basically lost Tartus.
Yeah, if Russia doesn't give back territory, like if Russia gets to keep the territory that it gained, it's not a surrender.
Yeah,
they won.
A white peace.
Yeah, Putin can still save face in the public eye.
Losing Syria is a substantially larger loss than the land bridge.
Fair enough, but they didn't. Syria isn't Russian territory. The losing bases in Syria, yes, but.
The control of Ukraine to NATO is a non-starter for Russia, hence the invasion in the first place. It is not just their principal reason for invasion was to make sure they didn't lose access to a $100 million plus industrial port and naval base in Sevastopol. However, they run their gas through Ukraine. They were trying to work a trade deal with Ukraine, and the West came in and basically said soft power takeover and forced out Russian interests. Russia invades because, it's a combination of factors. The victory point for Russia in this would have been we control the land bridge and maintained Crimea, but losing in power in Ukraine and Ukraine to NATO, which is seemingly going to happen, is a massive defeat, and it basically shuts down. It puts Europe in deep control of their ability to transport energy into the country.
It makes Turkey really a pivotal position.
Oh yeah, and Turkey's acting up. But this is why they blew up Nord Stream 2. It's about saying to Russia, you're a gas station, shut your mouth and do as you're told. The loss of Syria means that we can offset their gas monopoly by bringing in Middle Eastern gas into Europe, and it's going to dump the price of Gazprom. So we bring in competitive pricing through Syria. We drop the price of natural gas 20, 30, 40%. Russia then says our economy is in trouble. That's why they were rejecting this and trying to resist it. With Syria falling and the West being able to get what they want, Russia loses everything. Their economy is going to take a hit. They're already in trouble. This is a component of why they're fighting in the first place.
Couldn't they just run to China, though? Like strengthen their relationship there?
I think
they're already doing because they know they're very isolated.
But it's more like saying the strong and mighty bear is basically telling China, I will do whatever you say. Yeah. So yes, they go to China and they say, and it's the BRICS alliance.
Desperation,
and China laughs and says, Putin, you are no longer in a position of strength, but don't worry, you sign an unfavorable deal with us and we'll come to your aid. That could be escalation. The question I'm asking then is, what are the moves Putin has? Does he just say, I accept that we have lost our gas interests in Europe, or we're going to take a hit on these trades? The West has won control of Ukraine. Ukraine is going NATO. Or will they be like China and Iran? Let's go, baby.
I think the second is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean,
Jamie Dimon does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have a particular strong feeling about what they'll decide to do. I do think that nuclear weapons invite NATO, direct conflict with NATO, and I don't think that Russia wants that. And I don't think China wants that either, because if Russia were to be thinking, oh, we've got the support of China, I don't think that that's in China's best interest, and I don't think that they want that either. China's got a lot of economic interests that go up in smoke, literally, if there's a nuclear exchange.
All right, we're going to go to Super Chat. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, share the show with everyone you know, become a member over at timcast.com to support our work directly and get access to our members-only Discord server, as well as you get to watch the Uncensored show. But I'm going to start with the Super Chat that just came in because it's on topic. Lurch says, Russia dominates in weapons systems and Ukraine is hemorrhaging men. They aren't losing anything. Tim, you have no clue what you're talking about. Sir, it looks like you Google searched this maybe half a time, not even once. Russia's interests, the war is not about one specific point of Ukraine. That's silly. Russia has interests all over the globe, and they've been dwindling. One of the principal components of this has been the Qatar-Turkey pipeline for a long time, with Bashar al-Assad outright saying, like, this is not innuendo. He literally told the West, you will not build a gas pipeline through Syria because it would damage Russia's sale of energy into Europe. And Russia is our ally. And the West said, then you will be a short-lived government. And all of this played out. This was reported in 2012 in The Guardian. And I believe the initial report that came out, which outlined this, was 2009. With Syria falling and Russia evacuating Tartus, that is a tremendous defeat. Could you imagine what would happen if the U.S. announced we were evacuating our naval bases in, I don't know, like Japan or something? We're pulling our troops out of South Korea. I don't know how many troops they have in Tartus.
58,000. Oh, never mind.
But I'm saying we have a substantial amount in South Korea. But imagine if the U.S., we were active in one country and we said, we're evacuating all of our vessels and all of our troops. People would be like, whoa, that's crazy. Why? The U.S. is evacuating. They're losing control of the region. Russia
kind of did happen in 2021, right?
With which?
Afghanistan?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sure. The U.S. withdrawal there was a major defeat, a surrender, as it were. Right, Ian?
Oh, yeah, they lost a lot. Did Russia leave behind stuff in Tartus? Did they just flee? Did they just rout?
Well, I think even their military's got to be smarter than that.
What was reported is that the Russian Navy has evacuated Tartus.
I wonder what was left behind.
To the extent we know exactly, not entirely
they
sure.
They surrendered. If stuff was left behind, then they surrendered Tartus.
Russia has pulled its support for Syria because they're focused on Ukraine. So by all means, you can make the argument that Russia is crushing Ukraine. It's been 3 years. And now they're withdrawing forces from Syria and resources to focus on the fight on their border. That is not indicative of winning a larger international conflict. By all means, Ukraine is pulling in women and old men. They're not doing well, but the West is dumping an infinite amount of money into this war that Russia is struggling to maintain.
We've got to take a page from history in what the Allies did to the Germans after World War I. They split the shit out of that country and they basically destroyed it and made it pay reparations and wrecked their economy, gave rise to World War II. If we do that to Russia, if we stomp on them and try and smear them out, they will rise up later as a more chaotic, evil entity.
Unless you invade them and take over their government and occupy them.
Maybe, but I don't think that's on the table. That I don't see on the table. That's like invasion equals nuclear holocaust. So that I just think you need some sort of equitable peace deal. Maybe they lose their Syrian equity. We run the gas line. They get access to the Black Sea through eastern Ukraine, and then we'll try and find some sort of parity.
I think even like in a more short-term sense than that, they're going to go right into the hands of China and Iran and those other countries, but mainly China. And that growing partnership, even if we got like the West gets a short-term victory because the Ukraine war went badly, it's going to be a really bad thing in the West for that to happen.
There used to be a really great website called conflictmap.org. I guess it doesn't exist anymore. We used to use for everything. And it was wild, the amount of active conflict on the world. I think it's important to point out to everybody that war is the natural state of the earth. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but holy crap, you look at these maps and it is everything. Everywhere. It's just wild. Yeah. All right, let's grab some super chats from the top. We got T-Bomb85 says, the best perk for Timcast members is the exclusive 7 Days to Die server with over 60 active players starting fresh at day one. Soon when the new 1.2 update hits this month, join today, beanie optional. Hey. Have you guys seen the new Grok AI image generator?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow, dude.
I retweeted one of the images that it was indiscernible. And people, they'll say in the comments, oh, I could tell it was AI, but that's because in the post it says, can you tell that this was AI? If you didn't put that, if it just posted the image, people probably, why is he posting that bland image?
So I just heard I was listening to the All In podcast that Tesla had a breakthrough with connecting GPUs. They had only they thought that it was only possible to connect like 40,000 of the big NVIDIA GPUs. They reworked the way that they connect them from the ground up, and they managed to, and when I say connect, I mean connect and be functioning and thinking the same, thinking about the same topic all at the same time or working on the same problem all at the same time. Tesla's reworked the way that they connected them essentially, and they've got 100,000 now.
From 40 to 100?
From 40 to 100,000 GPUs that are all thinking, and they think they can get it up to 200,000 and possibly up to 1 million. And these are the new NVIDIA
because the GPUs are getting faster as they're connecting more of them.
Exactly. So like I said, these are the new ones. So if they can connect 200 or 500, 500,000 or 1 million, like that's going to be, I mean, if general artificial intelligence is on the table, it looks like Tesla is going to be the company that does it.
Yeah, I think instead of being, general processing unit, graphics processing unit, it'll start to take on the definition of universe. Graphics processing universe. I mean, we're creating universes. This is wild, dude.
I don't think the AI thing is very good at all.
What'd you get?
Like the images are really, really great, but it can't make everybody.
Did it make you?
It made me, and it was like not very. It was close. It it can't do the hat.
Have Tim Pool losing in a game of Magic the Gathering to Ian Crossland.
I tried Tim Pool being crushed at Magic the Gathering by Matt Walsh. It didn't work.
Oh, what did it do wrong?
It made some weird other Matt Walsh, and I tried to define the print. It doesn't work.
Use his Twitter page. I think Grok understands if you at Timcast losing to at Ian Crossland and Magic.
Let's try that. Losing. What's Matt
in
Walsh's
a forest?
What's Matt Walsh's Twitter?
It's Matt Walsh blog.
Yeah, Matt Walsh blog, right?
I think so.
Nope, I got a better one. Here we go.
Yeah, Matt Walsh blog. Flanked by treants.
No.
In a dark green, ominous forest. Yeah, and the treants will be playing cards too.
Okay, here we go. Let's see if this one works. If it's not good, I'm not going to show it, but if it's good.
We got to know either way, even if it's bad.
Okay, I put make an image of at Timcast and at Matt Walsh blog enjoying anime together.
And then what does it take, like 10 seconds to
One of the
render?
images failed.
Okay.
Okay, there's a TV. And, yo.
A winner.
No, it's not.
Pull it up, too.
It is not a winner.
Well, that kind of looks like you in the upper left.
It kind of does. This one gave me hair, and it kind of looks like my profile. This one made me bald, which is more accurate. And this one, I don't know, it makes me look like Kyle Rittenhouse.
Doesn't look like Matt Walsh, though.
No, it doesn't. Like, who's that guy? What is this all about? Although that is anime.
You look good with hair, man.
And we are not watching the TV at all.
Are you going to pull Elon Musk and get beautiful hair?
No.
How did he do that anyway?
He paid money. All right, let's
cutting edge tech.
Let's grab some more. Here we go. Kieran, the Meat Man, says, Tim, the MNCPM is not million, it's the Roman numeral M. Yeah, mil. I didn't say million. Used in finance, MM is million, thousand. It's like milli. M-I-L-L-E. How do you pronounce that?
Meal?
Milli?
Mia?
I don't know.
It depends on what language. The L is ye in Spanish, but it's probably Latin. Mile?
Mile?
Yeah. Mile.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's Latin. I watch those videos of ancient people speaking like old Latin with the accent.
Yep. But M-I-L-L-E. So I certainly did not say cost per million. Let's see. Shout out to Biltong Baron. Hey. All right. Big Cheese says the devil was handing out snow cones. Anna Kasparian was on Glenn Beck's show. Oh. She was. It was good.
Yes, I watched it.
That's cool. When I was down there at the Blaze, they asked me if I had her contact info. I'm glad they got in touch.
Lurch685 says Daniel Penny is celebrating at a bar in NYC and people are buying him drinks. We are so back. Yeah. Indeed.
Go easy, Danny.
Yeah.
What do you think he should do?
He's got to be careful, though, because there are armed hitmen running around New York City. People know this. So.
Yep. He needs to leave the city immediately.
Yeah.
He's not from New York, was he? He was a student there, right?
Yep.
I think so, yeah.
All right. What have we here? All right. Based African says, this just goes to show that smart criminals are the most dangerous. The saying is that there are no smart criminals, but I'm not sure if I believe that. No, the reality is the smart ones don't get caught.
Mm-hmm.
Or they form governments.
People always say, like, how come criminals are so dumb? You always hear these ridiculous stories like the dude kept his backpack with his manifesto and all the evidence and the weapon on himself and was traveling around looking, not changing his appearance. Like, what is this?
If that's the guy, it's like he wanted to get caught.
Right.
And people to read his stuff.
Yep.
Self-sacrifice kind of thing.
I think he did, yeah. Definitely.
All right. The Sig P says Trump should pardon him on a slow news day and make the left try and find a way to spin that into a bad for the lulz. I don't know about pardoning a violent murderer like that, though. You know what I mean? Philosopher Stone says, would you please shout out my Twitch channel? Why? Twitch sucks, but sure. The Stone Philosopher, Leo. I'm a based furry who is bad enough at video games to be funny, but not so bad that it's frustrating. Well, like I said, I don't agree with it, but as long as you're telling people to do the correct political things, I don't know that I agree with the furry stuff, but...
Check out the Bazaar new card game.
What is that? It's a furry card game?
No, it's just a cool card game by...
I believe that overwhelmingly furries are suffering from a psychological identity disorder based on watching anthropomorphized animals on TV.
Yeah, probably.
It's weird, man.
Well, it's Looney Tunes and stuff. The kids were raised by TV, and it doesn't affect everybody this way, but some people, for hundreds of thousands of years, humans were only raised around other humans and only socialized with the adults around them. That's why there's that viral video of the children who sound like they're adults from the 50s, and everyone's like, why do these kids sound so smart? Because they were only learning from adults. Now, you've got children's program, which is just deranged. I despise these people. I think I don't know, man.
It's like being raised. You see the occasional kid raised by wolves throughout history, and this is like being raised by cartoon wolves.
Oh, we are in serious trouble. It's not just these conservatives got to understand, man. It's not just the schools. It's these YouTube children's channels.
Oh yeah.
I saw one where it's just some like middle-aged fat guy, and it looks like normal kids content. He's not a pervert or anything like that. But he is going, he's like, and the kids watch it and laugh. And so they're like, see, it's good. It's like goo goo gaga. And I'm like, goo goo gaga-ing your babies gives them speech disorders. I'm not making that up. So if you look at kids who used to grow up and they'd see that the parents talking like this, darling, please. And I'm kidding with the North Atlantic accent, but seeing their parents, they would emulate that and become that. Now that we've made children's content, which is goofy noises and insanity, children are growing up and emulating that. Thus, you end up with furries, people with an identity disorder. They want to dress up like cartoon animals.
Bugs Bunny was very articulate. He was eloquent.
And so a child watching that and identifying with it's like imprinting on it, like a duck that when the chicken hatches, it sees you and it thinks you're the parent or whatever. Yeah, we don't need that kind of stuff. It's frying people's brains.
Just talk to your kids like they're normal.
That's right. All right. What do we have? Corey Anderson says, Phil, that shirt is amazing. Please sell them. All right. Where did you get that shirt?
I made it. I had it made. Someone, I forget the guy's name, was the Twitter user had made the art, and I grabbed it from him. I was like, oh, that'll look good on a shirt. I wore it in the No Tomorrow video, too.
Let's go. David Manning says, took a huge step and used all my savings, but got the machines to start manufacturing and making my rubber PVC patches in Missouri instead of China. Overseas, like everyone else, made in America again. Poppin' patches.
Good stuff.
Based. Noldia says, can you have on Rachel Pickrell Hawkins? She's a mom from Aurora, Colorado, who was arrested for trying to protect her children after abuse. Interesting. Haven't heard about it. We will look into it. Jack Mack says, we are immersed in propaganda, gaslighting, and political and social discord every single day. You know what they say? Ignorance is bliss, sadly. This is a tragedy all around, and there's a lot to learn from it. Yep. Indeed. Jack Mack also says, the kid shot someone in the back. Anyone who thinks that is heroic is sick in the head. He's a coward. I mean, it's look. Imagine you had a functioning normal society with people who had good morals. You wouldn't need this. You wouldn't be worried about CEOs screwing people over because they would have scruples and there would be shame. How do you stop a CEO from a big company screwing people over? Shame. Everybody knows who the guy is and he can't go to a grocery store without getting booed. And then he's going to be like, I can't do this. We can't do this.
Yep.
The problem is large urban environments where no one knows who anybody is and they have no neighbors. People are free to live in anonymity and obscurity and do whatever they want, even if it's evil. Hence, a cop can arrest an innocent person, and no, it doesn't matter. I don't live here. Like the Attilis Gym thing. When the local cops would not arrest the Attilis Gym owners over COVID lockdown, the city brought in cops from another city over who said, don't care, I don't live here. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. All right, Kevin Spears says, Ian should be able to get a job at MSNBC. If Elon buys MSNBC,
I'll headline.
The Ian Crossland Hour.
Yeah.
It'll be a great show.
Would you want it to be prime time?
And Rachel Maddow's under
7
contract.
p.m. It'd be 7 to 8, so I wouldn't overlap with this show.
But Rachel Maddow's under contract, so you should be on her show with her the whole time.
I'd love to do reoccurring guests on Rachel Maddow.
No, co-host.
That'd be so good.
So
I'd sit on her left. The TV's right.
And then whatever she says, you are allowed to interject.
Mm-hmm. I'll keep you balanced, Rachel.
Jag Mac says, is it anarchy? He was upset with corporate corruption, expecting them to be ethical and follow the rules. Maybe it's social Darwinism. To him, it's survival of the fittest, even if his interpretation was demented. It is not anarchy. It's fanatical idealism. It's someone he's trying to create the world he wants by force. Saravia says authority is what people defer to. One as maker of decision. Authority depends on people believing in one. Power is ability to enforce authority using up to and including lethal force. The Emperor's Champion said attempted anarchy would likely result in what Haiti is today. Disagree. if you live, I don't know, in like the Yukon Territory, and there's nothing to eat but lichen, and you're struggling, and you are with 30 other people, anarchy could work relatively fine in small communities where everybody is in a small tribe and genuinely just agrees with the people and trusts them based on their expertise. But it doesn't work in large-scale environments. It's impossible because you can't know everybody. What is it they say after like 150 people is when everything breaks down? Yeah. So then you're like, I don't know who you are, what you do. What makes you think you know better than me? And they're like, what are you talking about? I have hunted reindeer and whatever. We call them jingle horses, by the way. But I have hunted them for generations. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, I don't know you and I don't trust you and I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. And then things break down.
Yeah, Genghis Khan's interesting, his young life, because they were tribal. I don't know if they were anarchist, but they would hunt. And his older brother
Khan was like the monarch.
Well, when he was a kid, Temujin, he and his brothers would go hunt, and his eldest brother would take most of the meat for himself because he was like, I did most of the work. And they were like, well, that's not going to fly. So they assassinated their own brother. The brothers got together and killed the guy because he kept taking food from the family. He wouldn't give equal shares. It was a very learning lesson for Genghis.
Anarchy, I don't believe in, because even in small tribes, there's a chieftain, and it's because they have the expertise, you believe in it. And you could argue that, I mean, that's the authority. The people vest power in this person. So like real anarchist communes don't really work or exist. I just don't believe it. I think it's silly. But the idea of one guy deciding to kill another person to enact their worldview is certainly not anarchy.
No.
Yeah.
That's narcissism.
It's violent authoritarianism. It's like my worldview is the correct worldview, therefore you must adhere to what I demand of you. So, All right, let's go. Desert Rebel says, if anyone has angst over the healthcare industry, then you should be directing 90% of your ire at politicians who passed the Affordable Care Act. That overregulated the industry and blew up costs. I remember when they launched the health marketplace website, and then they told me if I didn't get healthcare, which I couldn't afford, my taxes would be higher. And so I'm like, okay, so like I have a job, and I'm getting like $200 a week, working 40 hours. It sucks. I was getting like $270. I was making $10 an hour. Then they say, like, if you don't get this, we're going to fine you. It's like 1%, 2%, then 3%. And I'm like, so I'm going to lose. My refund gets smaller. I get less and less money, but I can't afford healthcare. And so I went to look at the website. It didn't work. And I struggled to figure out how to get healthcare. I was like, this thing is broken and they're threatening me. It's wild. Terrible.
Yeah, that was a mess.
Let's go. BATM Media says, if you have the power to help someone and you elect not to, especially for something as capricious as profitability, you are effectively killing them. Disagreed.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that
Capricious is
right.
profitability. Like I said the other day, if I understand correctly, like, not that I'm like standing health insurance companies, but their margin is something like 2 or 3%. Like they're constantly paying out for people.
Yeah, because think about how much they have to pay the hospital.
Yeah.
I don't know if I made this point earlier, but I think when you really break down the problem in our healthcare system, it's not that the insurance companies are the problem. It's that the hospitals are charging like $100,000, $200,000. How's the insurance company supposed to pay that with their margin? So I think it really boils back from the beginning. That's the root of the problem, I would argue.
And that's exactly why I said, like, the problem is the fact that there's no marketplace. The market is what will drive costs down. I mean, I know that it's not popular to be like, look, man, the dude's making a lot of money, but the company itself, like the margin isn't huge. People don't care about margin at all. They don't. The only thing they see is like the net, the gross number that they're talking about. Like it's $1 billion company. There was some guy on Twitter the other day that was complaining about it, and they called the guy a billionaire CEO. And it's like, look, the only people that are billionaire CEOs are people that invent something or start the company and own the company. Because to get to billionaire, you have to own the whole company. There are no CEOs of health insurance companies that are billionaires. I looked up the info on the guy, and he's worth like 40 million. He makes like 10 million a year, which is a ton of money. I understand, but there's a whole world of difference between making $10 million a year and then being worth $40 million and being a effing billionaire.
Look up the Kelsey podcast. Didn't they sign like $100 million deal for 3 years?
I've never even heard of that.
I just thought it was funny. It's like the largest healthcare provider, healthcare being like 20% of the economy.
Yeah, worth over $100 million.
Yeah, he's getting a $10 million a year salary. And I'm like, that is a lot of money. but the media industry makes so much more.
Yeah. And so again, and it's like the fact that there were so many people that are saying that like the healthcare industry is the same as the pharmaceutical industry, they're not. Or health insurance industry is the same thing as the pharmaceutical industry, they're not.
Pharmaceuticals are the ones ripping off oftentimes the healthcare insurance companies. Yeah,
and they're talking about he's a billionaire CEO. He's not. There are people that are motivated by anger and they're completely ignorant about the realities of the situation that they're talking about, but they're pissed off because they don't have someone they know couldn't get coverage or whatever. And I totally understand why they would be mad about that, but it doesn't change the fact that you're ignorant about what's going on, the context of the health insurance industry, and why the person didn't get coverage and stuff. And to sit there and be like, it's good they killed this guy when you're speaking from a position of ignorance is totally wrong.
It's almost like it's a complicated system, and just shooting one guy is not going to fix it, right?
You think?
Yep.
All it did was make sure we can't know who the leadership teams are. They've obfuscated who the people are at the top, and they've hired massive security. They're going to demand higher pay because they're going to say it's a risky job and people are threatening us, so I want more money for this job, and they're going to drive up premiums to cover the cost of CEO demand because the companies can't exist without CEOs. I want to say this, okay? Tulsa King is a great show. But the one thing that I cannot stand about Tulsa King is how Sylvester Stallone and his crew snap their fingers and start businesses. I'm like, no, I reject this. People don't understand what managerial power is. And I've long thought about, I remember I was hanging out in New York with some friends and we were skating and I just look up at this skyscraper and I thought to myself, the managerial power that is required to make that building is insane. People don't get it. I'm talking about you need someone to plan the building, someone to plan the finances. You need someone to plan the construction, labor, the day-to-day operations. It is an immense amount of organization, managerial power. So I'm watching Tulsa King, and they're just like, here's what we should do. We should expand our business and move it to a bigger location and add a bunch of stuff to it. And they're like, yes. And then it's like the next episode they have it, and I'm like, no.
Steve Jobs, there's a cool video going around of him talking about management. And he's like, when we started Apple, we got to the point where we're like, well, let's just hire management. So they hired a bunch of professional managers and they knew how to manage, but they were terrible at everything else and they were dysfunctional. And he said the best managers are the ones that have no interest in managing, but they're so good at what they do that they have to in order to make it work.
The crazy thing is that dude who got arrested, Luigi Mangione, now has 230,000 followers on X. Yeah. He had a couple hundred. Then people found his account. Now they're following him. And one of his last tweets was reposting a Huberman podcast.
An intellectual.
Sure, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Intellectual doesn't mean you're smart.
Hope says investor capitalism is the real evil. Private companies don't have to make their stock go up in value every year to be successful. Blame Wall Street. I do think there's a lot of problems with that. The idea is, though, the companies, if they need to make money to expand the business, they can seek funds from the public. That's what it's supposed to be. But then you just get the idea that someone makes it, day traders, I don't like these people. What value do they bring to the system other than siphoning off resources through trade? And now they have bots that do it. I think it's all bad.
I think it's very concerning that most of our economy these days, especially since 2008, but also since COVID even more, is not even real. Yeah. I forget. I think Patrick Bet-David always brings up 25% of companies now are shell companies. They're not real. They just survive off of debt. I mean, what's being generated in our economy? And this is why I would not be surprised if there's a very big recession and they're going to blame Trump for it, but sometime next year, because they keep saying, the economy's doing great. The stock market's going up and up. Where? Based on what? At some point that bubble's going to burst, I think.
So they're protesting in New York now.
Oh, yeah?
But it's like people just walking around. So the crowd's pretty good. It was hundreds. New York is not known for riots. New York, it's cold, it's wet, and people really, when fights break out with cops, they usually just push each other and then the cops arrest them and that's about it. I've only ever seen a few instances of very serious violence. A cop was fighting with a protester and bashed his head into a glass door and shattered the glass. That was pretty wild. And I've seen protesters shove cops. But in California, that's where it gets crazy.
I think, too, it's more spread out, so there's more room to cause chaos.
In California?
Yeah.
The streets
are wider,
and they'll run
are bigger,
in random directions, and then they'll. So in New York, it's the police flank them. because it's all the grid.
Yeah.
And the cops literally just say like, hey, surround. They'll surround a wide area and then slowly move the cops in until the protesters are trapped on one block. What the protesters will all march down one street. The cops will then line up vehicles and cops at the end of that street. The protesters get to it, turn around, the cops are there. Then the cops slowly move in, and then they arrest everybody.
Also, could you imagine trying to loot the store of like some Italian bodega owner in New York? That's not going to go well.
Well, they do it all the time. And the guy was that bodega owner was getting stabbed, was about to get stabbed, and then he grabbed the knife and stabbed the other guy, and they arrested him for it.
Yeah, I know.
So I mean, New York ain't doing too well. But I'll tell you a quick funny story. I was in one of these, I call them kettlings, in New York during a protest, and the cops created basically this square, and so there was a bodega on the right side, and so when the cops basically made this kettle with orange netting, meaning you're all about to get arrested, a bunch of the protesters try to bolt into this bodega, and I go with them. I'm like, obviously, if you stand in the street, they're going to wrap you up, and you're going on a wagon. And so I jumped into the bodega with the group. The group, being a bunch of morons, tried to exit out the other side door because so there was a side door, the orange netting, and then another door. What I did was, as soon as I got in, I calmly and slowly walked to the back and started perusing their fine choice of ice creams and just looked around at the ice cream. The cops opened the door and grabbed the protesters and arrested them all while I sat there looking at the ice creams and then turned around and went, oh, what's going on?
Epic bluff skill, dude.
And then the cops left.
Nice job.
And then I went up and I got a strawberry shortcake ice cream.
Those are great. Strawberry shortcakes.
Yeah, but I'm like, dude, if you're with the crowd, like the cops are arresting everybody here. When there was like 5 protesters trying to run through the bodega, the cops went to the other side and then just grabbed them all. And they were like, oh, and they tried to run to the other side. And I just went to the back of the store.
That would get you out of hot water in a D&D campaign, too.
I was like, don't look at me. I'm just some dude who was buying ice cream. I don't even know what's going on.
For fine daggers.
Well, there was a problem in New York where
fine steel.
When they did this, they did one of these kettles in the early days of Occupy, and some middle-aged bald dude in a suit walked out with an orange Fanta. And when he walked out of the door, the netting was around the door of the bodega. And he looks around, he's like, what's going on? And the cops are like, everybody, you're all under arrest. And he's like, he walked to a cop and he was like, I'm just taking off work. I was buying a drink. And they were like, shut your mouth. You're under arrest. And he got arrested. And he ended up getting, like, he had to call his work and be like, I was going to get a drink and they arrested me because I was standing there. It's just insane. And he was at City Hall screaming at the top of his lungs, furious. It was kind of funny. All right, my friends, we're going to go to that members only show. So smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know, become a member at timcast.com. We've got a special surprise coming up soon. I don't know if it's ready yet, but there's going to be a special, a new benefit to being a Timcast member coming up very soon for all members. And I think we might be able to announce that tomorrow. So stay tuned. You're going to love it. And you can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Vince, do you want to shout anything out?
Yeah, go find me on YouTube at Vince Dao, so just VINCEDAO, and that's probably my main platform, and it's right here, convenient. So yeah, Vince Dao on YouTube.
Follow me at Ian Crossland on the internet. I believe that is behind me as well. Hopefully it's all in frame. There's my name. Follow me YouTube, particularly in Twitch and X. Hit me up. See you.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I'm Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can follow us on YouTube, on, what is it? We got YouTube, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, and Deezer. Last week I announced the new record, Anti-Fragile, is available January 31st, 2025. Pre-orders are available now. Go to my Twix page, my X page. The pinned tweet has the link to pre-order, so check it out.
All right, everybody, we will see you all over at timcast.com in about a minute. Don't miss it, and we'll see you there.